Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Haptic Feedback, a podcast about video games and computer technology. I'm your host Joel, and with me are my co-hosts Al and Jay. Together we make up the Haptic Feedback. In this episode, we talk about Nintendo. I'm about kicking ass, I'm about taking names, and we're about making games. China challenges, facing the Great Wall, PlayStation versus Xbox, in a submission hold or just tapped out, gaming in film. Is it a match made in hell? Without further ado, let's talk tech. Alright guys, welcome to another Haptic Feedback. It's been a very long time, let's put it this way. I can't even remember how to do this bloody podcast. So, Al, how you been?
Ooh, busy. Work's been very busy. We've all been very busy. I've been unwell as well. Actually, it's quite rare for me to be unwell. It's good to be back on the podcast. I think it's been long overdue. We're well behind. But I think in the interim, lots of things have been happening. So lots of interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, some good, some bad, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we'll get into that. How about you, Jay? How's it been going for you? Again, long time no speak.
Yeah.
Finally, we're here again, back together.
Yeah, it has definitely been a while. There's been a lot of news, and I've been bursting at the seams to talk about games and what's been going on in the industry. Other than that, I've been really, really good in a gaming mood. I say, I've fallen back in love with games. I'm still struggling with time with the family and just to play, but I've just been really interested in what's been going on, and I've been buying more games, which I know I'm never going to play, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? To getting the dopamine hit when you click that buy button, particularly when there's been a lot of sales. But yeah, no, we've been good. How have you been?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, look, I've been desperate, obviously, to get back podcasting. Obviously, people listening to the podcast may or may not know that. Obviously, I kind of will do all this prep work around it. So I was, obviously gazing at my Decker slide and thinking, we're never going to bloody use these bloody things. Really happy to be getting back to this, really. And like you say, it's kind of our regular therapy to get away from the woes of our normal working lives, you know what I mean? It's like Batman putting on a cape or whatnot, so glad to be back. But otherwise, been pretty good. Just been keeping busy. Thank God the weather's improving. Can't really complain, and just really kind of desperate to get on and talk about games and technology and the like.
Exactly, and like they say that any news is good news, because there's been a lot of bad news being floating around, isn't there? So we've got,
yeah, but I love the bad
plenty
news.
to talk about. Yeah, plenty to talk about. Yeah.
Okay, well, with that said, let's move on to our first topic. Okay, guys, I think for the first topic, what I wanted to do was talk about Nintendo, really, because we really talk about Nintendo. Jay, you're probably the only one at the moment that directly plays kind of Nintendo Switch, really. I've got a background of Nintendo consoles, but not this generation.
Yeah, I've been playing Zelda again recently, so before the new one comes out.
Yeah, nice, and I must say the new one looks pretty similar to the old one.
You know what? It's one of those games where I would say that game does not translate well in the videos versus actually playing. It's the feeling you get of being able to explore, where you can literally turn around at different angles and go, right, I'm going to go there, I'm going to go there, which sounds like something that you might have played in other games, but it's on another level with Zelda. And that feeling has come back to me, because I haven't completed the first one, Breath of the Wild. I'm guessing 30-40% way through. So the new one definitely looks the same, but I suspect when you pick it up and you are able to explore in the sky, and there's more dungeons, stuff hidden away, maybe there's you can go into the depths of the land and go underground. There's more caverns and puzzles. I think that's where it will shine. If you just see the open world, it'll probably feel similar to the others, but they'll add a lot more mechanics and gameplay. That's where the fun is, and it just doesn't come across in the videos from what I've seen.
Mm.
You got to say that's the Nintendo way, right? I mean, they're really strong with the kind of game design, game mechanics.
100%. I mean, I've always found Zelda's story is just it's terrible. Yeah, exactly. The pendulum is completely the other way to like gameplay mechanics, and I think that they've had enough time using this pretty same engine that they're going to spend most of effort on new mechanics and making it filling out the world that was not some barren bits in Breath of the Wild. I just can't see them this not being a 10 out of 10. They've had so much time to just focus on content this time around versus the engine. So this is Nintendo. I think they're going to come out swinging.
Yeah, I mean, they must have built up quite a war chest. I mean, if you think about it, the console itself released March 3rd, 2017 now. 2017. And as of December 2022, Nintendo have sold 122 million Nintendo Switch
Wow.
units. I'm guessing that's, including the OLED and
Wow.
the other kind of like models.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize it was that high. Wow.
yeah, they're doing well, and
The attach rate for like things like Mario Kart must be like 40, 50 million or something like that. I would be probably
I mean,
quite.
they sell a lot
Yeah.
of games. Yeah, they sell a crazy amount of games.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, if it's one of the key go-to games, they're going to sell pretty much almost one for one with the consoles. So it's going to be up there.
I was going to say this generation of Nintendo hardware, I think they have just got it right in terms of not releasing too many first-party games. And because some of them are actually rehashes of stuff that was out on the Nintendo on the Wii U. Is that the right one? Yeah, the Wii U. No, the Wii U. What's that? What's the? Yeah, there was the Wii U, the one that flopped, right? And the stuff that they've come out with first party is all scored really high, and they've managed to lure in a lot of third parties to fill in the gap. And a lot of the games that you would have typically got on mobile or PC have also filled out the library. They've just got it right where just quality, I just across the board, and the hardware is great as well. So they've just done really well from where they were last time, and they completely flunked it bad, didn't they? With the
Yeah. 122 million units, that speaks for itself, doesn't it? And I think it's only second to the PS2, which sold about 150 million. So it's getting close, I feel.
I don't think it's going to surpass it now because I think the hardware's struggling now. I think, and I think where the new Zelda game is going to struggle is performance, and a lot of people have had an early sight of that. That's what they've already said.
It's on its last legs,
dance,
you might
last
say.
dance, yeah.
It is a last dance, right? And some of these games coming out now might be the swan song it's looking for. I mean, same happened with the PS2. There were some games that came out. It was Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
It really struggled with that. But yeah, I mean, look, putting that aside, it's doing quite well. It's Nintendo's best-selling home console ever, quote unquote.
Wow, yeah. It's an interesting point that you made about them having a massive war chest. They, despite them having lots of money, they are masterful in still keeping the scope of their projects not too big with small teams, where the games are generally quite innovative. To an extent, obviously they target towards kids. Like the expectation for PlayStation games and predominantly adult audience is very very different, but. They've there were big question marks about them, how they were going to rebound off the Wii U, and they've just proved everybody wrong, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. As I think they always do. I mean, I kind of feel that now and again they do have a blip, because in terms of the console hardware, I feel they do like to experiment, and it'll be very interesting if they actually have a Switch 2 or something else.
Yeah, it's interesting the pace at which they're doing it now in comparison to back in the DS days, where there's almost like it's like new versions almost constantly. But maybe they just had too much to support during that time, and maybe they've learned a few lessons from it.
It'll have to be. So my interpretation when we say Switch 2 is the game catalog has to continue. An interesting thing that Phil Spencer was talking about on the Kind of Funny podcast, where he was saying in the last generation of the Xbox, the Xbox One was the worst one to lose because everyone's got their
Yeah.
game libraries now, and I think that applies to Nintendo. People are not going to accept their game libraries continuing. So,
But it is Nintendo. And they do things a little bit differently, don't they? And they don't mind.
they will risk people just going to PlayStations then, won't they? Because PlayStation has more games that are in the realm of kids games now than they have before. So
But they're not Nintendo
they're
games.
not Nintendo.
That's the thing. It's not Nintendo IP. And if you think about Nintendo, I feel they really create new IP.
Well, is it new IP or they reinvent new metas and universes around their existing IP?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But it's really a brand new. I mean, you never see kind of Nintendo. I think put aside something like Jack and Daxter and say, oh, like, we're not doing Infamous anymore. We're not doing Resistance. We're not doing Killzone. They're going to carry that on. Nintendo always carry it on. So
just as a side note that kind of supports this topic is, have you guys seen the new Mario movie?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen it with the kids. I thought it was really good, but I thought it was only good because I went in with the expectation that it's for kids only. Because if you get the story is very simple. The graphics are amazing. They really are. The Illumination Studios have done a fantastic job. The story is very simple and dumb. And it's for kids. But coming back to the point of spreading their franchise and IP into movies and doing it properly, I think they've done it. Going into new hardware, in one way, I can kind of see what you're saying, that they've got clearly, even for the younger audience, that the IP recognition and desire is still there. So they probably could get away with just reset on the game library, but I still think on one side I'm supporting what you're saying, but also at the same side, coming back to my point, I just think you get a backlash now. Information travels so fast, the media turns on you. Do they really want to risk that? Because they're making enough money anyway.
Yeah, but they've got a monopoly on it, right? Their IP is their IP, and they hold it really, really stringently. So they could. They've always done it, even with the Wii, because they already had a store there, but they didn't transfer the digital assets on from one to the other. It's one of those ones that they keep doing it, and we'll have to see if they actually continue on that pattern or embrace the sort of new world of digital libraries.
But if you subscribe to the Nintendo online subscription, I think there's 2 or 3 tiers now, but you get access to their library of old games, so that's already there. So they're going to continue that. There's no need to rebuy some of those old games. And every year they've been adding, they've been going for their console generations and adding more games. They're up to N64 now and starting adding more and more games throughout the year. I would imagine they'll get to the GameCube. Why wouldn't they carry on? Because people can get access to the old games. They're not going to rebuy them again, are they? Because that.
Well, that's exactly what Nintendo
want you to do. That they want you to. Yes.
You're rebuying Zelda as Zelda Wind Waker or Zelda, like Tears, whatever.
Yeah, but
what I mean? It's like, but it's still Zelda.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're talking about two things. You're talking about so you guys are referring about the same franchise IP, but a reinvented new game, which I completely agree about. But I was talking more about the exact same game from the Switch again on maybe with Switch 3 or whatever the next third one.
It is kind of two different things. I think for Nintendo it would be, a means to their end. That means is like, I want to sell Zelda or Mario as many bloody times as I can.
They want to sell Super Mario World again to me.
Nintendo, forget about what Sony do. Nintendo sell a crazy amount of their first-party games, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I just think they would want to continue that.
The ultimate decision point will be, if there is new hardware, how different is it really? and how backward compatible is it in terms of emulation. If it needs an overhaul of an emulation engine, then they're going to use it as an excuse to charge you again for the privilege.
I think this, right? I think if they move to hardware that isn't strictly backwards compatible, yeah, then you can say like it'll turn into the same old Nintendo, I think. But if they move on to the next version of the NVIDIA chip they use, then yeah, I think it's a feels to me like done deal. We have to go along with this back catalogue. But Nintendo, they do want to sell a crazy amount of games. That's no doubt about that.
Let's say if it's the same type of architecture, although I hear that that's probably not available. You guys can probably correct me on that, right? But let's say if it is similar-ish, or it could be a good emulation, or it's easy to do emulation, maybe they'll do backwards compatible for the next console. But 2 or 3 or 4 year consoles down the line, if we're still using consoles then, they'll find an excuse to say, well, that it's done now because we can't make it work. Is that what you're saying, guys? Are suggesting?
No, I think I'm saying something different. I just say the whole games catalog thing is less important to someone like Nintendo, who have focused on getting to a new console, and on that new console, giving you a new version of Mario they want you to buy, or a new version of Zelda they want you to buy. I don't think they ever think about necessarily you going back and playing their old games on the new console. However, it's a new day, isn't it? And I'm sure PlayStation were thinking that at one point. I'm sure Xbox were thinking that for a short amount of time.
Yeah, there's also that people have less and less time. There's more games coming out, and the games are getting more complicated. It's very different to think about, I want to play the original Mario now, because I played it when I was younger, and it's a much shorter experience. If you, let's say, many years down the line, coming back to play Breath of the Wild after you've had 3 or 4 other Nintendo consoles, you probably won't have the time to go back and play it. There'll be so much other stuff going out.
And they don't want that. They want you to buy the new content that they're going to charge a big sum of money for. And Nintendo games never go down in value. They never go on sale. You just pay for them, at the release price. So, I can't help thinking that they would want more the same. I mean, and before we get into any of that, I want to show you some information about how many games they actually, sell.
Yeah.
The Switch launched in 2017, and even then, it was low spec and a bit geriatric. They've got to be looking to kind of release some new hardware sooner or later.
Yeah.
But let's move on for that before we get too deep into that. I've already said Nintendo have sold 122 million units. And it's actually, I was wrong. It's not the second highest-selling console. It's just the third, behind the Nintendo DS.
Wow. How long did the DS generation last for? Because they had a couple of models, didn't they, for that?
Yeah, you can see the one down there. There's a 3DS.
Yeah, I've got that. Funnily enough, never played that either.
I've actually used it. The 3D effect was pretty cool.
Yeah, for the time, it's just another thing. I had that in the Vita around about the same time.
Oh right, yeah. The Vita was a nice piece of hardware, wasn't it?
The Vita was really good.
Yeah,
the Vita was really good.
Yeah. Looking at it, Nintendo Switch, it being a handheld console hybrid, doing quite well.
Where's the Wii U?
It wouldn't be anywhere near that list, I don't think.
Yeah, nowhere on the list. I mean, this is a list of what, 12 or something?
Just one quick question. Do you think the PS5 will hit that list?
Ooh.
I think it's going to hit the list.
You think it will, yeah?
I honestly think it's going to hit the list because, number one, I just think there's still demand for it. And I don't think Sony have really
started properly with it, because they haven't really started. So the rumor is, while Xbox is down, they're going to bring out some bazookas in their next showcase.
And we'll talk about those bazookas later. But yeah, I don't think they've started yet, and there's demand for it, and the competition's not doing too well.
No.
They're getting the supply in when maybe the Switch is basically in a transition period. The Xbox is getting some negative press. I think they're going to do quite well. And like you say, it's like they haven't really said anything. They haven't said what they're really going to do. Have they? I mean,
they've literally just first gear, right? Not even first gear, half a gear. Forget first gear. They're coasting.
Yeah, I think they're not too far behind already, and There's a few big things coming, right? So I think they should be able to at least surpass. I mean, look at those ones down the bottom, right? The sort of Game Boy Advance, the 3DS. I reckon they could easily pass that, and probably the 360.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the people listening, I've got a list. That's one of my slides, just so you know.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna. I feel they're gonna at least equal the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if
once
they
it's done, yeah, I think it's still a long way away from being finished.
Now, getting to the meat of the Nintendo conversation. Nintendo consistently sell software that hits the top of the charts. Let's put it that way. They have top-selling software. If you look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I know it's been out for ages, yeah, but it sold 52 million units.
Yeah.
52 million! That's a big number.
I've got 6 of these 12 games.
Yeah, thank you. Animal Crossing, New Horizons, 41 and a half million.
I'm surprised it's that high.
The YouTube culture around that, it's been really, really big. Really, really big. I think that one doesn't. The formula is pretty much the same. We're just improving graphics for that game as well. Which I actually own it. I've only played it probably an hour with my daughter, but it's just, from what I can see, it's the same formula, just better graphics. So they're not acting to reinvent themselves on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it might probably come some twinks here and there, and just adjustments, enhancements to the game mechanics, but it's still Animal Crossing. It's familiar. A lot of Nintendo games, they don't chuck out the formula. They twink it and enhance it and improve it, but it's always familiar. And this is why I was saying that other people might need to keep the game catalog going. It's also a very PC gaming centric philosophy, but Nintendo, they just keep churning out the same game.
Yeah, but it still feels less though. If you think of the older generation, I mean, you'd expect on that list. But maybe the list is obviously it's quite limited with 12. But like a Metroid, an F-Zero, those sort of other classics as well. But I think Nintendo have now sat into their kind of usual cycle now with the Mario Kart, with a Smash Brothers, with a Zelda, Pokemon games, the Super Mario Brothers, and that's probably it. And to be honest, they're probably making tons of money from it. So why change the formula?
There's enough content there to keep you going for a long time. I mean, Mario Kart, that is not even a Switch new game. It's a Wii U game. So it was already old and had DLC, hence why it's called the deluxe version. And even within the life cycle of a Switch, they've then released double the number of tracks they're releasing over the next 3 years, and I think we're halfway through that. So it's still got more legs on it. So that doesn't even reflect what you've got there. Doesn't actually reflect the full sales, because there's a massive DLC stuff they've sold as well for the Switch.
Yeah, and I imagine it sold kind of 51 million as opposed to 52 million on the Switch, and basically 1 million on the Wii U or something ridiculous like that. I don't know.
It's a great game, though. I tell you, I can't wait for the next Mario Kart.
But just guys, look at the numbers. The top 12, right? Nintendo games sold. The bottom one is basically something that you'd be proud of as a publisher. That would be a smash hit if you were a publisher.
So just for our listeners, that 12th place is just under it's 14.75 million. 12th place, and first is 52. So there's a range in between there. What is a typical PlayStation, Xbox kind of like? You've killed it. 10 million.
20 to 30 million, I think, is killing it on the PlayStation.
Yeah, okay, and that means it's like a PlayStation Platinum, like they do a cheaper version type thing, is it?
I don't even know they do that anymore, do they?
I think they stopped doing that now. Although they just turn it to Game of the Year or whatever.
They're charging more for that with all the extra. Yeah,
it's not less, it's more these days.
Yeah, okay.
The cheap skill's gone out, right? Instead, we're gonna charge you the day one release version. Then we're going to charge you the Super Game of the Year edition, and then the special version with some sort of box, with a couple of figurines in it. Or the reality is, like, I mean, let's say a PlayStation game will sell, let's call it between 15 to 30 million, and that's really, extremely good to knocking out.
Is that like a Gran Turismo Horizon type of game? Yeah.
Yeah. It's that sort of thing. It's like a God of War.
Yeah. Okay.
Imagine God of War's at 20 million plus now.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
So 52 is
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah, so you can imagine that, and these numbers. I mean, Nintendo. That's why they're doing so well, and that's why I'm also kind of saying, right, what is Nintendo's real advantage at giving players a game catalog, yeah, on a new console, when really all they really want you to do is buy the game. They don't want any. Why would they want a distraction?
But I don't think it's a distraction, though, is it? Where the new game is going to have all the new stuff anyway. Oh, I haven't thought this through, but let's take Smash Brothers, right? They're saying that's probably the last Smash Brothers because in that particular version, which I own and I've played a lot of, Smash Brothers Ultimate, it's got all of the stages and all the characters of every single Smash Brothers. And I forgot the director's name. He's basically said, "Oh, he's not making Smash again." So and there's a lot of tournaments and things around that, and they could probably people are going to want to play that on the new hardware. So
I can imagine what they would do is a basic digital version, but you still have to pay for a base one, but you get all your DLC that goes with it or something. But for whatever this is assuming there's a new version in terms of a new Switch or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I don't know. Like I said, it's a changing world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole game catalog thing is, to me, it's a very PC centric kind of way of thinking
It
about
creates a
games.
stickiness, right? I just think you open yourself up to kids getting a little bit older and say, oh, I'll just switch to PlayStation now because I've got I can't play my old games on there. Whether people actually go and play the games on there, I don't think people actually do that. Yeah,
That's the other
they
thing. Isn't
don't.
it?
It's just,
The numbers speak to that.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just a nice feeling.
yeah.
You can when you want to, when you won't really.
Well, look, only time will tell, right? But I just personally think there's less of a reason for Nintendo to do that. There's less of a reason because they've got such well-established franchises and IP that they carry over from generation to generation anyway. And it's let's be honest, it's largely the same game most of the time. You know, maybe there's less of a motivation for them. And ultimately, I'd still say fans of Nintendo consoles buy it for Nintendo
Yeah,
games.
which I will carry on doing. Can you just mind? Yeah, let me look at that list, this second list. Yeah, okay.
See a Monster Hunter in there.
Yeah, so if you actually, an interesting thing is if you look across. I mean, I don't know how many. I'm interested to know how many main IPs have they got. If we were to add across the whole lifespan, like like a Star Fox and F-Zero and Kid Icarus and like whatever other franchise IPs they've got, and they've still not get new version of those games.
Mm.
You know,
They haven't left them behind. They're just waiting for the right
yeah.
moment.
As a Switch owner who's into Nintendo, the console and buying the games, although they've had really good games, and I've been more than happy. I've also felt they've only used a small spectrum of their IPs in this generation.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
the point that I feel like they're almost sitting on games and not releasing them because they're not needed to.
Yeah, there's the opportunity cost of doing something, isn't there? And all of that sort of thing. Yeah, I'd agree. And they're probably looking at, well, what's going to sell,
Yeah. Plus,
because games are expensive.
they probably don't want to release games at the same time as themselves and compete against themselves. Really,
But if you look at the list, it's all more or less all Nintendo first party.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They've got their own mini monopoly on their own console.
No competition as well, really, in this space. What I would really be interested in now, and the data's probably not out there, is what's the actual usage of their games across the age spectrum? And I would,
Yeah.
and I would really love to know how much, although they've sold loads of copies, what's the actual usage, and whether, for example, PlayStation is probably eating down the age stack into their space because more and more youngsters are actually playing Call of Duty when they shouldn't be, or playing FIFA,
Yeah.
and that although they've sold a lot, the usage is going down, and therefore we might think it's a slam dunk. They come out with a new Switch and then they do their own Nintendo thing, and maybe they don't have a back catalogue, and maybe they come out with other games that are very similar and don't innovate. This, for example, and then how much people will still come back and buy at the same rate that they're expecting. And will they then get another flop that gives them the kick up the backside to do something different for the next one? I don't. I just feel out of all of the main three, that Nintendo have done more this yo-yo of good to bad, whereas PlayStation
they
has
have.
been stepping up, and Xbox seems to make the same bloody mistakes again, shooting themselves in the foot. Because what you're saying, monopolies in any sort of industry creates complacency and mistakes get made, and I'm really interested to where Nintendo goes next generation.
I think Nintendo are a bit different. I mean, in that they've obviously previous generation they've always had your living room console plus your handheld. They've had two different consoles effectively in any generation, but now they're not doing that. That must be saving them a bundle of money in terms of supporting two different kind of platforms in essence. It also gives, I think, if you're a PlayStation gamer, Sony are not going to be releasing any kind of handheld anytime soon. So you've got an absolute reason, an excuse to get a Switch. And the only thing I see changing is that maybe this whole PC handheld thing really gains a lot of traction, and with the Steam Deck pushing it along, and then there's now an option for those people who say I've got an excuse to get a handheld that's not a PlayStation handheld, but it could be like Steam Deck or something.
The alternatives are coming. There's a few getting released imminently. I think in the next few days actually. That's looking quite impressive out there.
Yeah, but they're not going to have the games. It still comes back to the games. It's like the whole.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I kind of want Nintendo games,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I mean they'll have access to your Windows catalog or whatever, but and Steam and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's competing against the Steam Deck really, if anything.
Yeah, but the big part of that is Nintendo IP, which is not going to have, and you can play a lot of the good PC IP on PlayStation, and I guess vice versa now. Yeah, but that's also a unique selling point now because these other console makers, they're not in the market handhelds. They don't have the IP, and there's the excuse to spend money on the Switch. For people who aren't even die-hard Nintendo fans, if you know what I mean. And I think that's an interesting perspective.
They
really.
definitely had a bit of the original Wii vibe, people buying consoles and only buying one game and not really, or buying it and not using it that much because it looks cool. And I mean, I know a lot of people like that. They might not be on that list. I'm guessing off the top of my head, 20 to 30% of their first party games were rehashes of Wii U games, which were good games in their own right. But I just think they've had low pressure on getting the games out from the first party perspective. Interestingly, I don't think there's that many third party games that are AAA that have come out on the Switch. It's there's things like Mario Rabbids which are collaborations and stuff like that. Everything else,
some conversions. There's been The Witcher and the Doom.
but
Eternals,
those sort of things I don't think run that well on the Switch. What's left that runs well are kind of your indie games, 2D sprites, or maybe some slight bit of 3D.
Let's move away from the games for a little bit. Let's talk about the other facet of Nintendo, and that's that they've certainly. I wouldn't say historically, because that implies that they've never done it, but certainly the last, I'd say, couple of generations or few generations, they don't engage in any sort of arms race. So, I mean, personally, I don't think there's any reason to worry about specs because this bloody thing was obsolete at launch anyway. It's low spec. It's always been low spec. What are we talking about? But I mean, if you look at what they have, and I run down the specs of this thing, it's like NVIDIA Tegra X1 or Tegra X1 Plus. It's an ARM4 Cortex 857 chip at 1 gigahertz, and it kind of reminds me of what was on the Vita. Out of the box, I guess at launch, really, it was 32 or 64 gigabytes. Obviously now they've got the OLED screen now, but obviously it launched with an IPS. Obviously sub 1080p, but docked, yes, 1080p via HDMI. A Maxwell architecture NVIDIA GPU, which is super aged. You can't even talk about T-flops with this thing because it doesn't even go up to 1 T-flop.
Mm.
If you consider PS4, what was that? That was what, 1.8 T-flops. That was at launch. You know, this thing's obviously geriatric, right? And you know, audio, obviously, bog standard audio, bog standard, you know, IO, 6.5 hours standby, not real true gaming, but you know, it's super low spec. But what next, though? I mean, are they going to be concerned about their back catalog? If they are concerned about the back catalog, then it's going to be evolution. If they're not concerned about the back catalog, then it's more likely to be revolution. Good revolution, don't know. Yeah,
I can't see them doing anything funky. They don't need to. It will be tightening up of the same handheld, you know, hybrid console, better specs, and then they'll have a wave of rehashes of Mario Kart, Mario, and they'll start to use some of their other IP that haven't been touched, which are games that they would have come out on the current Switch, and they would have probably bumped the graphics up a little bit, and not even probably used the full bump in hardware on the next Switch too, and they'll still carry on going, I think, and they'll probably sell well. That's what I kind of see.
yeah. I think that's likely. So it's more NES to SNES rather than GameCube to
Yeah,
Wii, if you know what I
yeah,
mean.
because
Yeah.
we're you know, I think we're heading into a recession as well, right? And everything is very cyclical. I just can't see themselves taking a risk. You know, we've got things like Meta messing about with VR, and that's not heading in the right direction. You know, there's all these indicators of like doing transformative stuff isn't really taking off right now. Why play with the form? The whole whole cloud thing with Google Stadia and all that sort of stuff, trying that stuff. You know, I just now's the time to have steady Eddie, isn't it? I think with the console hardware and focus on the games, keep the money coming in is where
Yeah, I
common
think so.
sense dictates. You know, like remember when the first Wii came out, whether that was after the GameCube, wasn't it? The Wii.
Yeah, it was. And that the GameCube comparably wasn't a good performer either. Yeah, it didn't do too well. And that was definitely, it felt like it was actually third place behind even the Xbox. I might be wrong there,
Yeah, it
but
should be, I think. But hardware-wise, I think it was... I can't remember if it was the best out of the three of them, but
I think that was, yeah, they were all fairly comparable actually. But I think, yeah, the GameCube was fairly decent. But going back to this, yeah, I mean, I do think it'd be evolution. And equally, like you say, you don't want to rock the boat in the middle of a recession. You know, people prefer the familiar, don't they? Or at least something that means they can rein in their kind of expenses.
Exactly. And would you say the Wii U failed because of the naming, or was it just crap hardware? If it was called Wii 2, would it have sold better? And they would.
Possibly. Well, I do remember I was at E3. I had an appointment at the Nintendo booth,
Hmm.
and they obviously gave me a hands-on with it. At the time, I was actually mildly impressed with it for whatever reason. But after after the show was over and I got back home, I realised, well, actually, I'm actually a bit not concerned, but I wasn't really sure what the point of the screen was.
Hmm.
At the time, being at the show, getting access to it, you were kind of wowed by it. But after the kind of euphoria had subsided, not sure. At the fact that it was what it was in itself, they were chasing another gimmick, and it would have been probably a better thing if it was closer to the Wii than what we got. You
Hmm.
know,
Could you imagine them doing, let's say, effectively a Switch 2, whatever they call it, and then they experiment with maybe like some sort of VR add-on to that?
not day one. Honestly, looking at it, thinking about it, I don't think the economy is a good place for, let's say, new domains of gaming,
Yeah.
meaning new types of hardware. A console is not a new type of hardware. The computer, the PC is not a new type of hardware. The laptop is not a new
Mm.
type of hardware. A VR headset and something of that ilk, or a pair of glasses, where however they basically boil it down. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I just don't think it'd be a good idea right now. I mean, it's possible that Switch 2 does what it does what it's, form factor wise and function wise does what the Switch does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe you could plug that into some sort of portable, VR headset You know, that's your compute. You just plug it in. You have a cheaper pair of glasses, and it's portable.
Well, they had that. Was it that paper cardboard version, didn't they?
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's possible. People are gonna pump what they pump into in R&D, and that's like a capex. It's capital expenditure. But when you come into going from that to basically manufacturing, marketing, shipping, import export, advertising, supporting, you know, I have to say, what's the point?
Plus, they've already seen the others have a go at it as well. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's probably the only good decision that Xbox has probably made, isn't it? By not bothering with the with the VR.
They can just keep a console afloat. I don't see what they're going to do. If I'm being honest with you, right?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking from Nintendo's perspective is that that's not really what's made them the money.
No.
And in a situation where, you know, every time they've experimented, apart from the Wii, every time they've experimented maybe a bit too hard, they've become somewhat unstuck.
This is a weird one, isn't it? It's a hybrid console. When it comes to handhelds, they've predominantly kept it similar, haven't they? And they've stepped up, and it's a proven model. So I think the hardware, I think you're right, is probably going to stay most the same. And I'm going to buy wherever it is, right? So I would prefer it to be saying maybe tighten up the comfort on some of the grips are not comfortable.
That's what I mean. It's these little things maybe they should be focusing on, because like to make it a better handheld, if you know what I mean, or maybe better battery life.
Another question I wanted to ask you guys as well, which is, let's say they increase the performance by 50%. They probably could do more. Isn't that going to hamper the battery life significantly?
It's going to kill the battery
yeah,
life.
You'll need a bigger battery. Although, you know, CPU and graphics, there is probably they're more efficient, but even at 50% kind of improvement, you're still going to need a bigger battery.
I don't think they should even go for that. Honestly, I just don't see the. I mean, I guess it depends how well the silicon can scale with power. Yeah, when they can dock it, then they get the full thing. But you just can't have a portable device that runs, you know, for 1 hour gaming.
Yeah.
You just can't. I mean, and have Nintendo's name on it. You can't, because they've got heritage.
They can get away with 3. I think they can get away with 3.
Yeah. I think so, but it's just that's not a handheld, is it? I mean, anything that kind of like you can run handheld in an hour. I mean, you've got all these new powerful PC-based handhelds, and honestly, if someone's telling me, yeah, you'll get about 1 hour's kind of battery life out of it, and then you have to recharge it. Well, don't tell me this is a handheld, then. I mean, just seriously, don't say that.
It's just kind of like thinking outside the box is probably a bad outside the box. You could ever imagine them like ditching the hardware and just going, right, we're going to have some sort of thing that attaches to mobile phones, and we'll just focus fully on the games.
No, I don't think so for Nintendo, because I think Nintendo.
It's a toy, isn't it? It's a toy.
Yeah, and they want to sell you that toy, and they never say never, but I just feel they want full control of their ecosystem, and you know, if they ever got themselves into a spot where they had to develop for multiple SKUs of hardware, I think they would somewhat become unstuck, because their heritage has been, we've got a fixed piece of hardware, our development, you know, like strategy, our development teams are set up for that. That's what we're good at. And every generation, we may iterate on that. And even this generation, what we're doing, we're just basically collapsing it. So we don't even have the handheld versus the console SKU. We have one SKU. That's it. We have these development teams coming together. We have our tools coming together. We have our testing coming together. That's it. So I don't think they would, but you never say never, because
Yeah, I mean, they have dabbled in it, right? So there was Mario Kart on iOS and Android.
yeah, I just feel that can be done without them, you know, eating away at them, you know, the core of their main business. I just think that can be done anyway, in a low risk way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, that's my take on it. I mean, but you never say never. right? But look, there's been some rumors about the hardware. I'm not sure. I'm kind of think, I don't think they're going to go big, but they're talking about the next version of the Tegra chip they already have in the console, so the T239, or based on that. That's an 8-core processor, Cortex A78AE cores they're talking about, and it's obviously going to be a customized version, and people say it's got the code name Orin. It's based on NVIDIA's Ampere architecture, which is quite modern, and they're saying 2,000 CUDA cores. And then we kind of 256, shader cores in a Maxwell, based Tegra X1 in the current Switch. And they're talking about 4 T-flops of performance. They're really thinking a 10x increase versus the current Switch,
Wow.
which I kind of think is quite optimistic.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
But even if it was 3 times or 5 times, that's pretty damn
Yeah.
good. Like,
Yeah. Give it some upsampling technology like DLSS.
I just think the games they make, they just, a lot of their games, like the background simple, all of the animations and complexities in what you're actually playing.
That's
They don't
right.
even need that. Do
That's
they?
right.
I
And,
don't. Even
why
if it was that,
bother?
they won't even use
Give it
it.
some hardware upscaling technology. Just do that better. And, save on the battery life, save on the hardware cost. Just don't go the whole hog. And, I mean, for me, it doesn't seem sensible.
Does this Tegra T2 have similar battery performance as the
Unclear.
T1 that's in the current
Yeah,
Switch?
unclear. But I can tell you, if this thing was to scale up to 4 T-flops, yeah, I'm not sure. I can imagine it being a bit of a battery hog.
Yeah, it just depends on what you're going to run on this kit, right? So the games have obviously been developed in a specific way to run on the existing Switch hardware with its limitations. But what are you actually looking for here? There's 60 frames. Is it 1440p? What is it that they're going for the next?
Just going to say, like, I've got the original Switch, right? And I think it's marketed like at 3 hours or something. But if I pay an indie game on it, you can get 5 out of it. I mean, it's obviously mine's degrading it now because it's quite old. But if I play Breath of the Wild on it, you get like an hour and a half
Yeah.
if you're lucky. So it just,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine people actually do play any complicated games like Breath of the Wild on the Switch on the go anyway. So the T1 chip was it made for like some sort of streaming gaming hardware for
It was an
Nvidia,
NVIDIA
the
Shield.
cloud gaming thing, wasn't it? Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah. So what's this T2
I
come
cannot
from?
remember, but I think it's more the same. But it's just a much more powerful
Right.
chip.
Okay.
And it's like I say, what's the use case for it, apart from it being more powerful? That's really up for Nintendo to define. And you might be right also. Like, I mean, really on the go. I mean, I think about when you have a portable device, right? The times I've really used a portable device is really around the house, right? Not being tethered to my TV screen, or being on a plane, or being by a swimming pool on holiday,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I've really used a handheld device on the London Underground or a bus. That's never where I use my handhelds,
Yeah.
and that goes back to the Game Boy days. I just don't, yeah, because it's just like it's not comfortable, or it's too busy, or whatever the case may be.
And the game's too complicated and take a while to get back
Yeah,
into. Then you got to get off the bus or the train by the time you've actually got back into it.
yeah. I think less so Nintendo games.
I see the demand for actual handheld usage has gone down. Where
Yeah,
people
yeah.
like the option of being able to use it occasionally. I wouldn't really interested in stats if it exists. Of it's
Or around
probably
the
mostly
around the
used in
house,
docked
and
mode.
I don't know, just sitting your sofa with it. I think that's
Yeah,
but that's possible.
sure, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, you know, it's all possible, and some of the specs that have been rumored, not really overblown, because we're talking about last gen technology here. So with the right kind of chip fabricating process, it's not impossible, but it's just like, what's the use case? Why bother? I think if it is a handheld, fine. You need to consider battery life, because like, you go too far, it won't even be an hour's worth of battery life. Then you have to say, what's the bloody point?
if the Tegra 2, let's just say for argument's sake, it does 4 teraflops and you get 3 hours of battery life. If Nintendo took that chip off the shelf and capped it at 2 teraflops, would that double the battery
I don't
life, or
think
is
it's
it
linear.
linear in terms of how that works? Or
I think with you capping the performance, then you naturally cap the kind of the clock speed. You know, you won't basically kill battery as much, and then the architecture's got to be built SIP power. You know, something like 2 T-flop kind of handheld device. If it was just a handheld device, you'd be happy with that. But you may not be happy about that if you exclusively use it as a home console. But again, does Nintendo need that? And if you factor something like Nvidia's DLSS upsampling, if you have some sort of like, let's say, a hardware block, bit of custom hardware to help you do that, then you know what? Everything runs with DLSS, out of the gate. You can have 1080p console that gives you good 4K kind of output using it, and it won't kind of consume as much power. So that to me seems possible, outcome. Whether it will happen, I don't know. What should we expect? I mean, will Nintendo release Switch 2 or something completely different? We touched upon that. Backwards compatibility, as we know right now, is more of an expected feature. Everybody's doing it. And also, I think Nintendo probably have got one eye on continuity. They must want to carry over the 120 million plus existing owners. That would be the holy grail. Okay? And not all of those guys are going to be die-hard Nintendo fans. I think it's another reason to have, the back catalogue. If they do all of that, will we miss kind of Nintendo's kind of innovation? Because out of the three, they are the most innovative out of the three.
sorry, Nintendo, you think?
Not so much the software.
I find it a small gimmicky sort of stuff they've had, haven't they?
No, but they did really well.
Yeah, I mean, all they did with the GameCube is they gave it a handle. But you know what I mean? It's still they just think different. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. I just like when we say my version of innovative is actually something that you've not really seen before, but it's kind of like taking an existing thing and gluing it together to what they've already got.
Yeah, innovation is quite hard. I mean, like the Wii was, for what in its time, quite innovative for what they were doing. In I think Switch kind of, it's almost innovation 0.5.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
when it moved to the Joy-Cons, it kind of fundamentally changed the way you
Yeah.
use the switches and stuff. So it did a really good job, actually, to step up.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that bit is quite cool when you get two controllers out of the box. My kids' hands fit perfectly on them, and it's just handy. You like when I have it with me, you're more likely to play a multiplayer game, which is fun, really fun when you're out and about.
If they do decide to evolve rather than go for a revolution, I think that's we'll miss some things. But I mean, it's not to say they can't go half of the way there. But yeah, I mean, what's the hardware going to look like? Is it going to be more the same, just a small increment, or something bigger? But they don't do arms race. That's the
I just we spoke about it a lot. Carrying on their back catalogue, I've just kind of hit home what you were saying earlier, that if it is backwards compatible, the games out are still so good that you could just carry on. You could say, "Oh, I've got too many games unplayed. I'll just carry on playing those." So it's interesting to see what they do next.
That's right. That's what I was actually getting at, and it's less of a reason to buy
games.
Yeah,
games
that
not
really
console,
are
yeah.
very similar to the one that came before it. If you know what I mean, it's like, but now that you're not blocked off from playing on your new shiny console.
Just interesting. I just thought as well. I could be wrong here, but the Wii, I'm pretty sure it had Super Mario Galaxy 1, 2, and 3. Was it 3 as well?
Two, yeah, up to
Was it
two.
2?
Two, I think it got up to. Yeah.
It was just 2. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because I think this generation, assuming they do come on a console in January, they're not doing. Breath of the Wild will be the only one that's having a second release, because even Splatoon 2 was a Wii U game, I'm pretty sure.
Splatoon 3's
So
out as well.
Yeah, but I'm saying Splatoon 2, I'm pretty sure was a Wii U game, so it comes into the kind of a rehashing of a Wii U game. So I think Breath of the Wild will be the only, and that I think is a more of a, it's a it's an expansion upgrade versus a new game engine as well, isn't it? So I guess you could say it's not a complete.
Nintendo have something to protect. They have game sales to protect. When they look at the numbers and they kind of work out what their strategies, I think they're going to look at that and they're going to think, if we give people their game catalogue, carry it over, what is it going to do for our game sales?
People might not upgrade and say I've got enough games to play on my current Switch, and wait till I've done that.
Yeah, but it's never really stopped it. That's the thing. It's maybe it's uncharted territory for Nintendo now, but it doesn't ever feel that it's stopped it. Again, I think the Nintendo hardcore, they've got a different beat to their drum, I feel.
The only way they could do that is that let's say it is the Tegra 2 and its 10x performance, and the new Mario Kart just looks really good.
But the art style of these things, how good could it? You know what I mean? That's what sometimes blows my mind about Nintendo, right? The art style, the visualization, it just looks like a kid's game.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I still, if you do a 10x performance, you'll get something like Mario will look even more like a Pixar game.
Yeah, potentially. But I think the Nintendo fans will buy it nevertheless. I'm sure now there is this segment of people who've bought a Switch who aren't that traditional necessarily Nintendo fan, but they bought it because, yeah, I can take this thing on the move, or at least that was the idea.
Yeah.
And I want to have Nintendo IP.
I think that the Switch has had that Wii effect where it's sold because of the gimmick more so than we probably realise. That's my kind of gut feeling. A good gimmick, good gimmick.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It has a practical application to it.
Well, it was more the push on both of them, right? So around the sort of casual market. So because of the way you had motion controllers or something else, it just made it so much more accessible to the more casual base. And Switch also did that too, with just being so accessible.
I think they merely just consolidated two markets they had, right, into just one SKU. I think that's all they did. We're not going to have a DS. We're not going to have a Wii U 2 or whatever they want to bloody call it.
What happened to their net sales? Because they've obviously they've merged two verticals into one. Is the net revenue
It's all
gone up?
P&L, isn't it? And at the end of the day, if you think about this, right, I mean, you imagine that you've got two separate sets of developers working on the portable versus, the home console. You're not doing that anymore.
No, I understand. I understand that from a technical perspective. So let's just take, for example, they had two verticals before. One is a console. One was a handheld. They've smashed them together, got efficiencies, but is the profit more than it was before because their costs have gone down so much that they're compensating for having another vertical. They've only got one product now, haven't they?
I would actually say that the efficiencies, I think they've been able to leverage those quite well. I can't imagine they haven't been able to do that. I mean, because of some of the numbers for the Switch software sales.
The mobile has obviously eaten into their handheld, hasn't it?
Yeah, correct.
So they were forced down this route, kind of. It just so happens that they've managed to also sell large volumes of games as well. It'd be interesting to see the numbers if they've actually making the total profit has gone up.
I can't imagine it hasn't. I just can't. I mean, because like you said, they were in a market where it was getting eaten by mobile. To support that model, they've also got to have. I don't know if they've got less people. They've had to separate these teams out. Let's just call it that. But you have to market these games. You have to do all this other stuff around them. The peripheral things that are outside of just really developing the games and whatnot. So I can't imagine that's not being helpful. And what I will say is, companies that really thrive, the Apples of the world, they don't have 100 products. They have a few core products, and they focus on those core products, and they do those core products really well. And I just think the companies who do falter are the companies who have just too many bloody products, and they never do it well, if you know what I mean. I mean, you might say, I mean, Sony's, they still got too many products probably, right? But they're doing better now, and the reason they're doing better is that they've gone out of certain markets.
They've got less TVs, less headphones.
Yeah, even with what they've retained, they've got less of that. but they're focusing on these different verticals, and they've got fewer verticals, and that's helped their business. I mean, they're probably thriving off the back of it now. But anyway, we're really going too far into other things now, and this conversation's gone on for way too long. All right, so I think with all that said, and I think Nintendo evolution, not revolution. We'll be interested to see what these guys do next, and it'll be interesting to see what if it's a Switch 2 or some other new Nintendo product they've dreamt up.
Yeah, I know I'll be trading my Xbox Series X for one for the Switch
Yeah, I
2.
mean that's probably the upside to that. So let's wait and see, and let's move on to the next topic. All right, guys. I think for the next topic, what I want to talk about is PlayStation versus Xbox again. And again, it really does feel like that. So, what can we really say right now? Well, obviously, there's been a shed load of news around, PlayStation and Xbox. So, I mean, what I want to do is just kind of give people a sense of where we stand with the different platform holders, or specifically these two. So let's start with Sony, and let's say strong start to the year for Sony. Well, PSVR 2 has launched. I would say it's been low key with a limited stock, and I kind of ask good strategy, because as we know, VR is a bit of a niche area. So why go too big? And the state of the economy, why go too big? But I will say there's been over 40 titles in the launch window. So they're supporting it. Sony being Sony did their own teardown, and it feels like content creators, you've been given notice. We're taking over, right? And the hardware itself has really reviewed extremely well. The feature set is extremely strong. Eye tracking, foveated rendering, HDR image quality. People love the image quality. Haptics works. In it, thank God, it comes with earbuds. Yeah, thank God. And really now, in the cycle that's in at this time of recording, PSVR 2 is going to be available at retailers. So I think Sony was selling it direct for a while. But it still managed to sell approximately 300,000 at launch.
Wow, that's more than I was
Yeah.
expecting, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might say that's respectable. On the other hand, Camp would say, well, that's not that great. But what are you comparing it to? And we don't have definite numbers yet. I still feel it lacks a killer title. But there have been some really good titles on it. I mean, Resident Evil Village, bit of a game changer with the VR mode. Gran Turismo 7, an excellent VR mode. There's definitely stuff to play on it. Other questions that we've had, is PlayStation Home VR likely to happen? Who knows? Is it subdued? And it does really feel subdued at the moment, but that's partly to do with the economy. And, again, we wonder, will it ever work with the PC? And I think, what? If it doesn't do well enough, I actually think it might. I think there'll be more of a reason for that.
Don't you think they are planning to do that, given that they've got a general PC go-to-market PC strategy with like their games anyway, like Horizon? And can I just put my little tin hat on for a second? Yeah,
tin hat on.
Yeah, tin hat on. So, given where Sony has been losing lots of money over the last 10 years, and they've been restructuring over the last 5 years, and they've reduced their product set, like we spoke about earlier, and they've really, firing on all cylinders. This feels to me like they were building a product not only for the PlayStation, but generally for quotation metaverse coming up over the next 5 or 10 years anyway, and getting ready for that market, if it does exist or not. Because if you look at the PS1, they never really had a killer title, and they had plenty of time to build one.
And it did okay. It didn't do amazing, but for a long time, it was the best-selling VR hardware.
Yeah, I mean, there was some good ones, but again, there was the things like not necessarily Sony first party type stuff, but Super Hot and other things, Beat Saber, I think they were doing really, really well for.
Yeah, but there's no first party killer app, Sony app, and from what I understand from the PSVR 2, there still isn't a killer first party app, and by now that you would have thought they'd at least build one. So I think this is a pet project and will remain a pet project until something bigger happens outside of sort of gaming consoles. Is where I wanted to end my little tin hat moment.
Yeah, and I do think look, we are talking about a much smaller market, than the traditional games console market. It's tiny in comparison. It really is, and it's not a cheap, straightforward barrier to entry, is it? It's not cheap.
I mean, it's still better than the PC ones. However, I think the main issue is actually just in general PlayStation games. I think even if you look at just like the main sort of lineup from the PS5, forget VR. I think they've been struggling anyway. So for them to try and push a VR game that's first party, that's a really killer one, I don't think they've necessarily had either the time or the investment to go and do it. I mean, again, I'd probably look for something like a Wipeout, but Wipeout, the studio,
literally wiped out.
It'd be kind of wiped out. Exactly. So things like that, I don't see a chance of it coming back. But if something like that would make me go and push.
I sense that Wipeout on the VR would actually wipe us out. I'm not sure that go down too well.
You'll be puking everywhere from what I hear.
Look, the reality is much smaller market, and you know what? Sony they know where their bread is buttered, where they're gonna expend their time and investment, and I think we're seeing almost a wave of the future with VR. Really, as far as Sony's concerned, is that we're gonna have some built from the ground upwards, kind of like VR games, like Horizon, but then we're gonna mostly have add-ons to our existing AAA titles, because at the moment I would have to say that's less of a risky investment than basically having a full-on game, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if it goes that way. The whole PC thing, you know what? I mean, I think it will be like the rest of what Sony are doing. It will be timed. They will say, okay, we've sold enough on our console kind of like platform. We've given people reason buy our PS5 console. Okay, no, let's open up to the PC. Here we go. Right? But that still isn't a big market. Let's move on for that. What else have Sony been up to? Well, they've hit 38 million units sold recently. Okay, that's no slouch number. That's a good number. So we can say supply issues, thing of the past now.
That's more than PS4 in terms of speed?
Yeah, absolutely. It set a record. But I would say the first PlayStation State of Play this year, kind of a middling show at best in my view. Obviously it opened with a lot of PSVR 2 games, which is kind of good to see in one way. It had Humanity, which reminded me of Lemmings. The old 2D platform I don't know what you'd call it, really, strategy game, I guess. Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of an exclusive to PlayStation. Without them saying it, it's kind of exclusive. It's just didn't announce it on Xbox for whatever reason. Baldur's Gate 3 is quite an old IP, well-known IP, especially in PC circles. Street Fighter 6 obviously was there. Suicide Squad, any good? No idea. I just wonder if people are exhausted of kind of like bad DC comic kind of like content now. There's always a lot of it. They had Resident Evil 4 footage, Destiny 2 obviously like for launch trailer, that's launched now. Wayfinder, another online action RPG. It wasn't that interesting. Tetsuya and launches on PS Plus Extra. So, middling I think, to start the year off. Forspoken wasn't stellar. It didn't feel as bad as what's happening in the Xbox ecosystem, but it wasn't good. And obviously, PlayStation, no E3 2023 presence, but it didn't really matter in the end because there was no E3. So you have to keep wondering, does PlayStation have any plans or any plans they want to share. Yeah. So in terms of sales, doing well, but in terms of, I think, what they're showing us, not so much so. And but as I've said, the numbers will speak for themselves. 38 million units sold. We haven't got a supply issue here. Q1 2023, 6 million PS5 units sold. The top selling console that quarter, and a new record. I think the closest we've come to that is PS4, which shipped 3 million in 2014 for a quarter.
Wow.
So that's significantly more. Yeah.
Yep.
And it might subside, obviously, because the people who were waiting for supply to pick up now have got one. Who knows, right? They're estimating 19.1 million PS5s for, I think it's financial year 22.
It's a big piece of kit as well. I don't know.
Damn right. 2.3 million additional active users that came out of their financial report. They're targeting to sell 25 million units for the current fiscal year.
Wow.
So basically that's April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024.
Yeah.
The fiscal year's just begun as we're recording this. Reality, I think we're probably just over a month in. That's not a small number. And this is going to set a new sales record. The old one's actually been held by the original PlayStation. It's a 25-year-old console sales record. 22.6 million units in financial year 98. So
wow.
There you go. This comes out their financial reporting, guys. God of War Ragnarok, which released obviously November 2022. It's won the most BAFTA awards in 6 categories in 2023, and it really did drive sales of first-party software for financial year 2022, with dollar-based sales increasing 41% year on year. That's pretty healthy. I want to mention for Horizon Forbidden West, Burning Shores, which is the DLC, PS5 only. And I kind of felt what's been not been covered and it's been filling under the radar is that now that it's PS5, this bit of DLC, it's really upped the visuals and everything. Horizon Forbidden West was already a really good looking game. Because they're not constrained by PS4, they've really been able to up visuals and whatnot on it. And it's interesting to see.
So I think with the new hard drive, the stuff that's there's not that many games that are PS5 only built from the ground up. I think the architecture of the actual gameplay is going to start to change with these new games coming out, which I'm really looking forward to.
I think it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it. Spider-Man 2 is probably the game, the tail end of this year, but hopefully we'll really see that.
Yeah, we got a sample of that with Ratchet and Clank, the launch game, but we've not really seen anything else like that. If you know what I mean, it's just like it's been few and far between or non-existent.
But the general loading time has been great.
Yeah, loading times, but I mean, it's like some of these things, right? Basically, like following Redfall, and they were talking about not being able. And I better make this quick because we're going to go off on another kind of wide tangent. It's an open world game. So obviously you'd want to go into different buildings and rooms and whatnot. But they talked about some of this thing being locked. And then they also said there's not a lot of like possibilities to, go into a building, go into a room and, it's not very dense. But with this SSD technology and all of that sort of stuff, it's possible because, you're effectively loading a new level.
Yeah, like you'd expect like Redfall before it came out, I was expecting you got the vanilla American town, you go through a portal and it's a completely new world instantly loaded and you're in there. It's like you're seeing with Ratchet and Clank, right? You can literally go from one world into another world that's completely different assets.
It's even like walking into a different room in the same house. Whilst you maybe not loading the assets for a full level, you are loading assets. I think it plays into that. I genuinely think we're going to see more of that. We talked about PlayStation. So how about Xbox? Well, I kind of thought, these guys being distracted with the Activision deal, because Xbox Developer Direct did it like punch. Some people loved it, by the way. I was a bit lukewarm with it. I thought, yeah, it's decent. It's better than what they've done in the past. But the reality is, Forza, it's in 2023, no date. Minecraft Legends, it's out. April 2023. Redfall, we'll get onto that. Again, that's out. Hi-Fi Rush was a stealth drop, and I think that's gone down quite well. They talked about Elder Scrolls Online, which is obviously multi-plat, coming up in June. To be fair, the developer format was well received. But, half of it isn't very concrete, right? There's not a lot of surprises here, apart from maybe Hi-Fi Rush. But even that was like, that's not a big game. That would be, something to tide you over.
Sure. If you read the tea leaves, we all jaws dropped when we heard how much Microsoft was willing to pay for Activision Blizzard. It just makes sense now when they must have known their pipeline of games is heading one way, and that's into the grave. And
Yeah.
they've already gone down this path of Game Pass. The Activision Blizzard deal solves so many problems for them because they've got the back catalogue, great. People just based on that will sign up to Game Pass. Then you've got the current games that's still live. You've got the Diablo 4 coming out. You've got Overwatch 2, World of Warcraft, all those other stuff, right? And then the future stuff that's coming down the line. Given where they've clearly mismanaged their pipeline and roadmap of games, that's one side of things. The other thing that I heard as well, which I don't know how true it is, one of the theories, and I think it's a theory, is that 2022 was quiet is because they were looking to seem weak in front of the regulator to support the deal going through, and that's what I heard. Again, I don't really believe it. I'm in the more the camp there's a shit show going on there.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they got their process nailed down, and just had to see. To be honest, I mean, Game Pass is a difficult thing. We'll get onto that, but I just think I think people are very blasé about what actual Game Pass is and what it actually means for a person that or an organisation trying to do Game Pass, because it is such a beast. I don't think people are giving it enough respect. That this thing's a beast.
And
You want to feed this beast.
yeah, exactly. And also Microsoft, and then what I hear all the rumours where, for example, with Halo and all the culture and people leaving, I think Microsoft have got this culture of the corporate business apps type culture, and they've had that in the Xbox space. And when you're dealing with media and entertainment, it's a very different culture. And I think Sony has done a much better job with PlayStation. Obviously, Nintendo's masterful at this. I think that's part of the problem lies. But coming back to your title, Xbox hasn't got a stranglehold on anything.
And the whole silly thing was like just before, obviously, the recent news, and Xbox signs a deal with Nvidia GeForce Now. Xbox signs a deal with Nintendo for COD. Just to myself, okay, really? I thought, okay,
Signs
okay,
of desperation,
Microsoft.
aren't they?
Yeah, it does feel like that. I get it, but I'm just thinking, guys. And let's get into that. GeForce Now, Hulk Smash, the Green Team, them signing a deal with Nvidia. What can I say about this? I mean, let's read what I've got down verbatim. The agreement will enable gamers to stream Xbox PC titles from GeForce Now to PCs, macOS, Chromebooks, smartphones, and other devices. It will also enable Activision Blizzard PC titles such as Call of Duty to be streamed to GeForce Now after Microsoft's acquisition of Activision closes. So the statement was, Xbox remains committed to giving people more choice and finding ways to expand how people play, said Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer. This partnership will help grow Nvidia's catalogue of titles to include games like Call of Duty, giving developers more ways to offer streaming games. We are excited to offer gamers more ways to play the games they love. Combining the incredible rich catalogue of Xbox first-party games with GeForce Now's high-performance streaming capabilities will propel cloud gaming into the mainstream, offering that appeals to gamers at all levels of interest and experience, said Jeff Fisher, Senior Vice President of GeForce at NVIDIA. Through this partnership, more of the world's most popular titles will be available from the cloud with just a click, playable by millions of gamers. All right. Okay. Having done this, and based on what's going to happen next, is actually a little bit ironic. And then Nintendo, Xbox signed a deal with Nintendo. Xbox and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox, with full feature content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market.
Isn't this subject to the deal with Activision going through?
Yeah,
It would have
mostly.
been,
I think it has to be, right?
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
And I was just thinking to myself, will Nintendo fans actually even care about this? Right, for one thing. And Nintendo fans don't really buy Nintendo consoles. Well, they buy them for Nintendo games, right?
I bet Xbox will pay Nintendo to have Call of Duty on there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the deal was. It was actually them paying.
Yeah, and why would you play Call of Duty on Nintendo rather than a PC, Xbox, or PlayStation? I mean, if you're a COD player, you are playing COD on those platforms right now.
Yeah, but you need to think of it as the perspective of a kid.
Yes, the younger market. Yeah, that's it.
Their parents can only afford to get them one console. They'll feel like they're playing COD and they'll feel like they're part of it. Even though it'll be an inferior version of it, they don't care.
All I've got to say that is, young person, don't play COD. Why do you want to shoot somebody in the face? Why? Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you want that?
Because it's fun.
And the other thing was, does the deal have Nintendo's next console in mind? And, potentially.
It'll be a streamed version of it, won't be the actual.
No,
I don't think this is about streaming per se.
Yeah, this is about actually just a game.
Are you sure? Because there are versions of games that are being already streamed on the Switch, aren't there?
Yeah, actually, what I will say is, recalling what the narrative was, it's not explicit whether it's about streaming or not. They just talk about it being on the Nintendo consoles, but they didn't say how.
Yeah.
So what else can we say about Xbox? Well, I kind of wondered that, because obviously their financial report came out, and I did wonder to myself, is the Xbox strategy about hardware? And what they do, they obviously they break up their financial report in the different kind of silos or pillars. And personal computing, which had a number of 13.3 billion, includes Xbox, but obviously it includes PC. That decreased by 9% year on year. Gaming revenue decreased by 4%. Xbox content and services increased by 3%. And that's really the service. Xbox hardware decreased 30%. Which is a massive number when you think that we're only 3 years into the generation.
There are no first parties in games in 2022. That's just outrageous. and dropped a flop in Q1 of the next year.
Yeah. I mean, services revenue's up. And you have to wonder, is that really the new Xbox? Is that really what they're focused on? And, it's been long said, how should you take a 3% increase versus a 30% drop for the hardware?
Do you think some heads are going to roll on Xbox?
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know what they could do to kind of turn the situation around.
See, Phil Spencer's managed to actually build such a strong brand around himself as an individual, almost like a Mario. He's replaced Master Chief, hasn't he, for Xbox almost?
He's the new mascot. Yeah,
unintentionally.
Phil's a very likable guy. You kind of listen to him speak, you think this he comes out to represent.
Yeah, but not recently. He's lying. You can see he's lying, and he's coming out with a corporate spiel, which he wasn't doing before. So he's turned out to be the same as all the other guys. So it was all an act. It's my take.
Well, Xbox is coming up on Microsoft's balance sheet, so things are different. It's not so much a blip anymore, is it? So
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how much money's been sunk as well, of course, because they've been buying studios left, right, and centre, right? So
It's not good. That's the only thing you can
yeah,
say about it. It's just not good. And then obviously the CMA, our very own CMA in the UK, basically have just said no, you're not buying Activision. They're blocking it. And I was actually deeply surprised by this actually because the first news that came out from CMA said we don't agree with Sony. And then the second bit of news that came out of CMA was like, it's not about consoles. It's about cloud gaming, and that's why we're blocking it. And I felt Microsoft's response was quite interesting, and I'll read this verbatim when the news came out. Mr. Smith, it sounds a little bit like Matrix, but quite a senior figure at Microsoft. He said he was very disappointed with the CMA's decision. But more than that, unfortunately, I think it's bad for Britain. It does more than shake our confidence in the future of the opportunity to grow a technology business in Britain than we've ever confronted before, he said. People are shocked. People are disappointed. People's confidence in technology in the UK has been severely shaken. There's a clear message here. The European Union is a more attractive place to start a business than the United Kingdom. Before we get into that, CMA's response. CMA's chief executive, Sarah Cardell, told the Today programme, and in response to these comments, I think the decision shows actually how important it is to support competition in the UK, and that the UK is absolutely open for business. We want to create an environment where the whole host of different companies can compete effectively, can grow and innovate. The CMA said that Microsoft has already 60 to 70% of the share of the cloud gaming market, and combining with Activision would really reinforce its strong position. This would be problematic because it would really harm the ability of other competing cloud platforms to compete effectively and offer the kind of innovation and product choice that we want to see in the market. First of all, I want to talk about Microsoft's response, which I thought was absolute fucking poo. I'm sorry, it was. I couldn't believe what I read. I just thought, what? What are you saying?
it's just applying political pressure, isn't it? That's what.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just thought this is bloody poo. It just felt like a veiled threat.
It was. Yeah, it was a threat. Yeah.
It really didn't sit well with me, and I thought, right, this is not on. I don't necessarily think they're going to carry through with any kind of. There's going to be no action based upon this, but the fact that came out this person's mouth is like, oh my god.
I think it's a strategic move. For me, I see it quite clearly as it's not bad or good. Well, you can argue, but it's bad or good, right? But from the position that they're in, which is of a weak hand, they've played a card which indicates where they're really at, which is at a very weak place to resort to something that's nothing to do with the real situation. So
Yeah.
that shows for me weakness, and it shows weakness with what people are saying. This is foretelling this it's done when it's actually not logically done yet.
And the FTC have more or less indicated they're going to fight this anyway. But I just felt, my god, this is. It just didn't sit well with me. Not from the perspective of gaming, but from the perspective, our economies in the world economy is in a bit of a bloody shambles at the moment. Okay, and for you to come out and say this, and effectively say, you know what, we may not do business with you in the future. This may impact your economy. That didn't sit too well with me. That did not sit too well with me, and I thought
It's a threat, isn't it? It's a threat.
It is.
it is, and I thought to myself, how can you basically say this, right, and not have people think that you're the evil empire, right? And I hear all the other outlets talk about, oh well, you know what, PlayStation are striking deals. They're making games exclusive. Yeah, but they're not fucking threatening an economy, are they?
Yeah, whole country.
Someone tell me if they're doing that. And I just when I read this, I just thought my blood boiled, and I thought, this is not the way. This is not the way to conduct yourself, especially in the climate that we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. it wasn't a response to the decision or any of the things in it, right? It was just like, well, it's just bad for Britain, right? What?
Yeah.
Well, so it's not bad for Microsoft then? Okay, so you didn't care? This the whole thing is a bit, yeah. It's just I don't know if he actually had any thought about it or he just reacted.
I know it really strategically they're not in a position of strength at the moment, but my God, if people were paying attention really to what was being said, I would just thought to myself, you're just knocking another nail into this coffin here.
Just as a side, isn't there like a 3.6 billion pound
Yes,
payout to Activision if it doesn't go
that's
through?
right.
And that's
Cortex laughing. I mean, he, for
it's a
him,
win-win.
right?
It's a win-win.
Yeah, if it doesn't happen, I'm still winning.
What happens to that money? You just get distributed against their leadership as just a bonus.
I have no idea. You can imagine that.
So can I just ask you before we carry on? Let's say it doesn't go through. What happens to Activision Blizzard as a company going forward? Because they're in turmoil. Got people leaving left, right, and centre. As I hear, franchises are still quite strong. What happens to them?
You have to wonder whether this is really distracted away from the actual problems at Activision. This has been going on for a while now. I have to say, no one's really talking about the problems that are happening at Activision right now, because that's been superseded by the whole Activision deal, because they feel this is going to solve it. Bobby Kotick, you're finally out. We got you. We got your number, buddy. It doesn't matter if you basically make $1 billion off of this. I don't care. You're out. The guy's he's gonna win no matter what. That's the reality of it. But if it doesn't go through, I feel Activision still win.
Do you think so? Why sell some franchises to Sony?
It might even happen, right? Or they could sell to somebody else waiting in the wings.
I'm not sure. Not sure they've got the money though. Not the same price levels that were being offered.
You don't think an Apple or a Google come step in, or an Amazon?
Tencent.
Tencent, yeah. I think they're selling Activision Blizzard. They've got turmoil inside. I can't see.
Yeah, but I do wonder about that. We don't absolutely know
No.
if it was Activision that went to Microsoft or Microsoft that went to Activision and said, we're going to buy your company at above kind of like market rate.
Typically, if it's that way around, as in the way it was approached, I think it would have been Xbox approaching.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's not to say that anybody else would do that. Because, $70 billion, that's no chump change, is it? Are you worth $7 billion? I don't know.
Do you think Microsoft could buy 75% of Activision, then sell the rest 25%? That's to go to other
They
people.
don't want to do that.
Still, though, I don't think they'd be allowed
Yeah,
to.
they want the whole pie. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. Microsoft, with the money they have and the clout that affords them, they could afford to go to a company and sign the kinds of deals that Sony and PlayStation are signing. There's no doubt about it in my mind. They could match and exceed what Sony and PlayStation are doing. But why are they not doing that? And then I thought to myself, the only reason they wouldn't do that is they want to feed Game Pass. And in order for a franchise like a Call of Duty or something else to exclusively sit on Game Pass without, the parent company making a big sum from physical sales, digital sales, or what else, right? Is if you basically give those guys a stupid amount of money. And from that perspective, it means that you might as well buy the company. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You might as well buy it. Let's park away what they're going to do next if the deal doesn't go through. But look, the CMA has blocked it because of, cloud gaming or game streaming considerations, not the console market. Microsoft suggests, current market, it's like 70% to Sony, 30% to Microsoft. Just totally ignore Nintendo of the existing console market. The FTC is, asking Sony to, to grant Microsoft access to details of third-party deals. To what effect, I don't know. And then, you hear stories about Sony worried about Microsoft offering up bug Call of Duty for the PlayStation, which is equally ludicrous. And I just think, when I kind of started thinking about this, I thought to myself, is at most going to be delayed? permanently at this rate, the deal could be going to break down. And initially, I thought, are Sony kind of really working for better terms and conditions, like Call of Duty for 20 years, Xbox franchises on PlayStation like Halo. But I don't think that's what it is at all.
Halo, Redfall,
Yeah,
take your pick.
yeah, they don't need those franchises. It's just like, why would you want them? I don't want to stain my platform with your franchise, your IP. Please, keep away. Yeah. Right now, Xbox are not in a good spot. Redfall, substandard and unfinished. 30 FPS was just one of the issues. And I think 30 FPS was a fixable issue. The rest of what's wrong with this game doesn't sound it's too fixable. I mean, you hear stories of people traversing the game world. They go 75% through it, and they haven't had any sort of encounter. They're literally just walking. Effectively, they've got delivered their own walking simulator.
I find this baffling. They
It's
would
so
have been
baffling.
better off saying the game's cancelled. We've had to scrap it. We've got a team working on something new.
Arcane's rep, I just hope it isn't being permanently damaged, because they're really a game developer that I personally respect. Played Dishonored and some of these other games, and I just kind of think, how is it that game studio produced what they did? I just do not know. I have no idea. I mean, I've got to do a bit more research into that. And it's such an un-Arcane game.
So I'm hearing that although they bought Bethesda, they're not fully integrated in some of these games that were already in flight. Maybe Microsoft had relinquished control still to Bethesda until they got those out the door, and is miscommunication or mismanagement, something along that, because it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It really doesn't make sense.
On our chat, I was just saying, some of the stuff that we do some of the work that I've been doing in the corporate space is about people massage numbers on and charts and reports, management reports, and all these fake stuff, and make things look better. The best way for leadership to actually see the product is to actually review the working product as it's going through the development cycle, so there's no surprises. You can't massage a working product, and better still, the leadership can provide feedback as the working product goes along, as well as people that represent the user, and that's how you de-risk big surprises and make cock-ups. So
It's called a demo. It's called a demo.
Exactly. I just don't. It almost feels as if Phil Spencer's team around him have lost confidence in where they're all heading. It's just the numbers don't add up for how that was released in its
really
stage.
doesn't add up.
It's more than the developer not building a good game.
Yeah, it has to be, because we either working in software now, or we worked in software. We know there's this thing called a sign-off.
Yeah.
Just someone explain to me how this thing got signed off. That's a part that I can't get my head around, right? Because you surely would have been able to play this thing for an hour. You surely would have been able to do that. In that hour, you would have experienced what everybody else experienced.
So Phil Spencer said on the Xcast, as you got there, which is sub podcast as part of the kind of funny kind of enterprise thing. He said that the internal review is, we're expecting double the numbers, which is a complete lie.
There's no way. There's no way that could have. We'll get to that in a minute, right? But Redfall, I just think it might have damaged Arcane just permanently. That's my fear of this whole thing, more than anything else.
I think it's not that just that. It's a start of the nail in the coffin for Bethesda, because I suspect Starfield is going to be a shit show, given on what they've shown so far.
The pressure on that game at the moment and the team.
And I think it's it's the start of a wider nail in the coffin for Xbox in this generation.
If Bethesda had released a substandard Starfield, I feel without it being under the Xbox banner, there would have been a bit more forgiveness. Yeah. Because I think that's what's happened in their previous games. But now they're under this banner, I fear for them, honestly. I personally don't even think Redfall's fixable, to be honest.
You know, that's what everyone's saying. The
Yeah.
fundamental core of the game is the quotes I've heard. You know, this is not verbatim. Is people like the reviewers saying that we would have forgiven bugs, we would have forgiven the 30 FPS. The fundamental core of the game is not fun, and you can't fix it.
It's neither live service, it's neither an open world, and it's not even immersive sim is what Arcane do best. It's not even that. So what is it? I just don't know. I don't know. They feels like they really shot themselves in the foot. And that interview that Phil Spencer gave, and to be honest, was at the interview. He stepped up. Can't argue that, and he said a lot of sensible things. People are getting quite angry about we can't out console Nintendo or PlayStation. That statement. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You don't have the heritage. You're not doing some of the things they do extremely well. I mean, PlayStation had to catch up to
It
Nintendo.
shouldn't be about out consoling anyway. It should be about what games you have for people to buy the console in the first place. Doesn't matter.
That's what he means, Al. He can't do that. And he doesn't feel that's going to move the needle in any way. That's what he's trying to say.
Did you guys actually listen to the whole podcast?
I did.
I walked away from it thinking respect for the guy for stepping
Yeah,
up.
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But he's lost credibility with me now because up to this point he's kind of played the underdog, honest Phil, doing the best and rebuilding the brand for the community. But I came away thinking that he's lost all that for me because there was some corporate lies in there and deflection.
It's a little bit of that. Yeah. No, I don't disagree.
I don't trust him now anymore. I don't trust the Xbox brand. I put my hard-earned money down. I ran to the store without brushing my teeth just to get an Xbox because it was available in Smith's toy store. But I genuinely regret getting my Xbox now. I really do. I've never felt that with a console.
But some of the things he said weren't unreasonable. That's the thing. I mean, I know half it's corporate chat, deflection. But him saying we can't out console Nintendo and PlayStation with their model, I don't disagree. You've got to find another way to compete. I don't disagree.
No, but sorry, he was saying. But what does that actually mean?
That's exactly it.
It means they've got the model,
No,
and we can't compete with them in that.
it means
model.
they failed,
No,
whatever they were doing, and they
They're
probably
too
don't know
good
what
at
they're doing.
Yeah.
They're too good
No,
at
but
it.
it's this is what I'm saying because he also said in there that it's not all about games.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Referring to like, well, we've got cloud and
Yeah,
and
that's right.
we're kind of we've got the back catalogue and all that nonsense. Yeah, but come on, it's all
Your
he's
hardcore
lost.
don't care about that.
No, he's done the classic. I don't know what there's a phrase around this where you've lost the sight of what it's all about, which is what he was representing himself as a person who plays bloody games,
Yeah, I know.
and
It
it's
just,
all about the games. But now he's saying it's not about the games.
yeah, it's just not a good look. The one thing that bothered me about that interview, it wasn't any of that. The one thing he said about Redfall is that the team didn't meet its creative goals. He said that. And it kind of meant, I don't know what it meant. And he said, we give them creative freedom. Okay, that's brilliant. But the way this game's been released, it's not that they
Yeah.
haven't met any bloody creative goals. They've not met one goal. It's not one goal they've met.
You can see there's no vision for it. I literally today saw an advert for Game Pass. It's the first game they show after the logo is bloody Redfall. And they're still playing it now.
Part of me can't believe that Arcane would have wanted to release that game.
I think they were pressured. It's one of those. It's like because they've been pushed to kind of get that released for Xbox's target because they have nothing. They've been pressured to release something.
I can't believe a studio that's given us these other 9 out of 10 games. They're classic games. Released this and thought it was okay. It's so black and white. It just the game itself feels so undercooked and broken. Damn, anything can happen now.
So can I ask, right? You know, let's just project out this year. So what else we've got coming from Xbox? We've got Starfield. What else is there? as a first party.
Forza somewhere.
Yeah,
Maybe. And
yeah.
anything that we don't know of, people talking about Hellblade, but
No chance. Let's say Starfield gets a 7 at best. Let's say 7. What do you think is going to happen to Xbox after that? I really would like to hear your guys' thoughts.
I honestly think if Starfield doesn't basically knock it out the stratosphere, that there's going to be a lot of backlash, and it's going to be to an equal level of Don Matrix era. Don Matrix E3 conference. It was almost like he said, "Okay, Sony, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to f this up, and when you have your turn, you just have to say this, and we're done." It almost feels like if Starfield does not knock it out of the park, it's that sort of scenario because they've put themselves in a position, right, where, like you said, they haven't delivered. People in the Xbox community are starving. Then Redfall comes out, and that's got the taste of really, you're giving people, dog shit to eat. You put dog shit on a plate. You said, chow down on this. Go for it. This is what we can do. This is what we can do with our money. Brilliant. This is Xbox. Here you go.
Here's a glass of your own piss to wash it down with.
Yeah, I know. It really, it's to me, it's actually quite amazing. And the one thing that bothered me more than anything is that in that Phil Spencer interview, it was the team hasn't met their creative goals, and I thought, did any of you play this game before you decided it was good to go? I can't believe any of you did you play this game? Because your community's just played the game and they're just kind of telling you that they don't think you played the game.
I'm sorry, yeah, but he's lying so badly when he says that we're expecting double-digit scores.
There's no way.
He thought it was all on track, and everyone were doing high fives to each other when it was released.
It's absolutely no way on earth that could ever have happened. It's just unless he's living in an alternative kind of reality to the rest of us. There's no way. And it just bothers me, right, that people think, and it's an ongoing trend, right, because you've seen the state of some games coming out, and I just think, is this just the normal that platform holders you'd think that a platform holder who wants to, let's say, push up their reputation would basically have one eye on quality. You'd think that, wouldn't you? But that's not happening here.
So I now think, and I've been saying this for a while, for them to put that out now showcases where the rest of their pipeline is at. I think there's nothing close to being ready. I think I read something where Forza had a bit of a was in development and has had a bit of a reset for what I can only presume as being stripped down for a Game Pass version where they're going to build upon. So that's probably in a shit show, and I really think, and why they're willing to pay for the through the nose for the Activision Blizzard deal, I think they are in absolute. The worst is still to come.
Oh, that's horrible to think about,
We're going to lose because the PlayStation will do less.
Yeah, I know. That's an annoying thing because you know, right, that as soon as this happens, if Xbox got into a situation where they're only losing this generation and the next generation, right? Because obviously we know that kudos and rep takes a long time to build back up. Yeah, the PlayStation folks are just look at this. We don't have any competition in our space. Nintendo do something else. Cool. All right. It's just not the way. I mean, PlayStation stepped up because of the Xbox 360. That's what Microsoft gave us. They gave PlayStation real competition, and it basically, don't mess around. We're going to slap you.
Yeah.
Do something.
But that's because they had a good, solid lineup of games.
The strategy's it's different now, right now. I would say that what PlayStation are doing now is not so far removed from the early days of the 360. It is absolutely not that far because they're the ones who had COD
The
marketing rights.
lockdown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the ones who were getting the DLC first. And they had first party studios that were churning out interesting games. And they had quality. But now, God, how you rewind this?
This is deflection. Yes, they might have sold more consoles from the launch of this new current generation, because they don't have the stickiness from the back catalogue. But they had killer games, which is absolutely foundational. What we're talking about now is the future trajectory of Xbox.
Mm,
Forget comparing them to be second place, first place. No one's expecting that. People are expecting them just to have effing good games and a
they
good
don't have it.
pipeline of stuff, and they don't have it.
And even if they have something, it's not for now.
Yeah, and the thing is, they've had time. Yes, COVID did happen, etc., and things were delayed. But all those problems were in the past, and they've not really had that pipeline. I think people were expecting Halo to last them until certain other things kind of came in, but Halo didn't also turn out well either.
I
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
if I buy the whole COVID excuse. I mean, look, I think it's a
No.
total factor.
Mm, mm.
It's not helpful. But you look at what Sony did at launch, and we're knocking Sony. Yeah, Sony didn't have many launch games. They had Ratchet and Clank, they had Spider-Man Miles Morales, and they had the remake of Demon's Souls. Those three games are pretty much significantly better or on par with anything that's on the Xbox.
Now,
Yeah,
Xbox came out with no first party launch games.
yeah. They rolled the wave of Game Pass, didn't they? Really?
What I'm hearing people talking about now is forget Starfield. The breaking point is even sooner. When it comes to their summer showcase, which is around the E3 time, all the games they've been talking about that have been kind of logos have been shown, or they've shown some pre-rendered gameplay, such as Avowed,
Yeah.
or they've talked about Perfect Dark, or there's an Indiana Jones game X Y. If they're not showing some gameplay in the summer showcase in the E3 period for these things, then they're finished.
They can't be ready.
Before
They honestly can't be ready.
before they get to Starfield, people are going to start writing them off. So
Yeah, it's ticking, right? So if they have to deliver some games.
There's a lot of pressure on Starfield. I'm not an Xbox player right now. I have been.
no, you will be because you're going to buy them on Xbox.
Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, I don't. I can't even justify doing that. You know what I mean? But there's so much pressure on Starfield now. There's no place. There's no scenario where Starfield meets the level of expectation of it now.
We've already seen gameplay for it. It's been ripped
Yeah.
already for frame rate. It's been ripped for not looking that different from the other stuff that Bethesda has released.
Yeah.
And it looks like a deep, complex, easy to have loads of bugs game. Bugs in the game.
Yeah, and the worrying thing was when we cast eyes on Redfall, that looked like a middling game, even in its best kind of like state.
Mm.
And now that
True.
it's come out, it's a little bit different to what some reviews had played in that event. It's not middling. it's god awful, and it's not the frame rate either. Though that doesn't help. It's actually the gameplay and the world they built.
They even said the gunplay is dead awful in Redfall. The feeling of just hold the gun and the actual animations.
People are having to adjust controller input to get a good feel from it. I mean, honestly, I just sit here, right? What are you talking about? That can't be real, can it? How
It
can
might
that
have
be
actually
real?
been a good. It might have been a good game if you had another 2 years to bake.
Yeah, if we had time for it, and I just kind of fear for the rest of like, the catalogue.
Could you imagine Starfield not being that good, the showcase not being that good, Phil Spencer being turned out? Do you reckon they just wipe the generation? So look, we go quiet for 2 years.
Give up and
say
focus on the next one. Yeah, I think so.
I don't know that they can do that.
Hmm.
So like the whole saying, like, out of sight, out of mind. The incumbents are so really powerful at the moment. You know? They're so good at what they do. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're so good at what they do, right? it's difficult to kind of get an equal footing.
We're talking about games coming out and being of just generally being better than. So Xbox games generally being better than Nintendo and Sony. Forget that. They're not able to get it out the door on time, whatever it is,
Yeah,
even to like a basic standard.
yeah,
So they you know they've got some serious management issues, and the way that their creativity process, and it smells of the typical corporate world that we've come
yeah,
from,
yeah.
trying
No,
to do it
it does.
entertainment and media stuff, and that world does not work with
It smells of
the
bullshit, basically.
yeah.
I mean, I don't think they can be out of sight. Maybe they've got to accept that they're going to be third place, and not a good
Not a
third
good one.
place.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've got to basically spend this generation getting their kind of studios up to snuff.
You don't reckon they'll close it? That Xbox ran down. Don't reckon could happen.
I don't know because
Sell it,
it's
sell it.
well, no one's going to want it,
Yeah,
right? I mean, might want the IP, but then no one's going to want the brand. I mean, what are you going to do with the brand?
I reckon if they mess this one up, it could be finished for Xbox. You're talking about 2 generations of gaming catalog now on PlayStation, and potentially back compatibility on the Switch by the time they come back round. Too many if buts and maybes and more billions to spend. I think I reckon they'll just get rid of it, kill it.
But I think that's where Phil Spencer's kind of verbiage on we can't out console Nintendo and PlayStation. That'd be even more true because they'd be even further behind. If you know what I mean, it's like
I mean, it could be that they give up the console and just focus on the cloud service and on Windows.
feels like
It's the
they've
only
already
choice.
given up the console out. I mean, like, then I don't feel they've even waited for that. It's like it's like the way they've been at, and this is what bothers me the most, right? The fact that you let Redfall come out in the state it was in, and then you said the team hasn't really met its creative goals.
You let them under the bus on that one. That's not a good lead.
It's a shame they didn't ask him on the podcast. If he said that, I was like, is that after the reviews or pre reviews?
I mean, back to the Activision deal. If it falls through, what does Xbox do next? Can they even buy another kind of publisher like EA without being blocked now? And I'm doubtful of that right now. Is Game Pass even viable without them kind of like having content that's more has a yearly cadence? If you know what I mean, I don't think it is. To be honest, I think that's
No.
part of the problem. And if they can't get the publishers that can feed that, then what can they do? They sure as hell can't generate the content for themselves at the moment, that's for sure. If the Activision deal does happen, even if that does happen, you got to think about this, right? That it feels like it's been a real shit show in terms of how they manage things. No matter what you think about the Activision management, year on year, they churn out multi-billion game content.
Yeah.
Why aren't you running Xbox? Yeah, because you at least produce games. And I think the other thing was, will we ever get a Game Pass for PlayStation? Well, we don't know that, Al. It's kind of like
I don't think they have to.
I don't.
a weak Xbox. Like, I mean, I don't know. We say a strong Xbox, yeah, I'll definitely have Game Pass for PlayStation. But a weak Xbox, possibly because it's about terms and conditions. If the terms and conditions are right for Sony and PlayStation, hell, why not? I'd love Master Chief. A good version of Master Chief.
Yeah, I mean, he's dead. Master Chief is dead.
Yeah, and whose fault was that, right?
And not to go through it now, and I think it answers itself.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, if Microsoft buy Activision Blizzard, how can they manage all their game studios and that organisation when they can't even manage what they've already got?
They shouldn't. that's my unworded opinion. In fact, right, you guys just step away, get the guys who run Activision, get them to kind of do this. But then again, if that were to happen, does Cortex stay?
Well, the deal's not happening anyway.
Have you heard that was it Matt Booty, the other Xbox guy, speak?
No, I haven't heard him, but I've seen him in interviews. But you know what I heard about that whole Matt Booty kind of relationship with these other studios? That not all of these studios are really part of the, full-on first-party.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, I think this all deflection nonsense
Yeah,
as
it
well.
is. And I just got to say, what the bloody hell have you been doing then? Because surely that's the first thing you do when you basically have an M&A, right? You go in there and bloody take control, don't you?
Of
I
course you
mean,
do. Yeah, it's all lies. It's
oh god, it's such nonsense. The other outlets to speak on this, right? Because someone don't have our background, and obviously I'm not being arrogant here, but they've not seen people shovel this shit. I would say, right? And if they had seen that, they would kind of like recognize it for what it is. With that negative note, because we've kind of bashed Xbox non-stop for a while now, I think it's really kind of time to stop and watch this space, and we'll see what happens with Starfield, and we'll see what Sony do, because I'm pretty sure they're gonna get the dagger out and they're gonna twist it. Because I'm hearing rumors they basically signed Castlevania, Metal Gear, and Silent Hill as exclusives. So that knife's gonna get turned at some point. I don't think a weak Xbox is good for gaming.
no.
It's not. I mean, we want a strong Xbox, yeah, to
Yeah.
keep Sony and PlayStation in check. You know, that's what we want, and so we will watch this space.
Sure, and just my final comment is that even if Xbox does fail, we still have a bit of a backstop, which is it's in Nintendo and Sony's interest to still come out with the games because they make their money from the games.
Yeah, I mean that's also very true. I don't know. It's you know. I mean, the last thing I was gonna say is this gen's console wars never really existed.
No.
But when I first wrote that statement, I thought to myself, well, it never existed because they're in two different arenas. Xbox maybe want to kind of do the whole kind of services thing, PlayStation traditional, you know, um, console kind of business alongside Nintendo. But right now, I kind of almost think to myself, well, it's not really a console war because there's no competition.
Were you talking about a second generation of lack of competition? It's over for Xbox now.
Yeah,
I think it's
it really does feel like that, doesn't it? I mean, like they keep,
Xbox,
yeah.
Xbox One, Xbox Series X. Even the naming thing, they're completely fucked
I
up
mean,
as well.
yeah, just I
Yeah.
mean, Xbox seriously defunct. I mean, they might as just call it that. I mean, and I just, oh my god, guys, you had such
I,
an
ca- I,
opportunity
They
here.
need
I,
they need to do what I was suggesting to them ages ago. They need to turn it into a Steam box.
yeah,
Well, they've got so few exclusives for the bloody thing. They might as well, right? I mean,
even during this podcast, looking at the Xbox logo now and the console images and the pictures of Phil Spencer, it's become a joke now. They can't unwind that from me now. They're too far. They've fallen too far. Yeah.
just don't want the situation where you got a couple of dominant, groups, organizations. Competition is everything. Yeah. But anyway, look, with that, ending it on that mildly depressing note, I think, we've talked enough about the, PlayStation versus Xbox situation. We have to watch it. And I think with that said, let's move on. All right, guys. So the next topic I want to talk about is really China challenges. And really, what I've titled this one is China challenges facing a Great Wall. So, what's the China challenge or challenges? It's really more about the chip tech, semiconductor technology from the Chinese region. We often talk about AMD, Nvidia, and Intel, and we often say those guys need a bit more competition. Yeah, they've got a mini triad mini monopoly almost in specific areas. Clearly, that drives up costs, for the average consumer gamer, and whatnot. There's been talk of companies in China developing, chip silicon, GPUs, CPUs, and maybe one day these guys being direct competitors. But right now, the US pretty anti-China in many ways. So I mean, they've got the US has a sanction on in China's semiconductors, and I'll read a piece about what those sanctions mean, basically from Tom's Hardware. So what they've said here is that AI and HPC chips, high performance computing, shipped to China, cannot enable machines with the performance of over 100 FP64 petaflops or over 200 FP32 petaflops within 41,600 cubic feet, 1178 cubic meters. Furthermore, the supercomputer cannot have a throughput of more than 600 gigabytes per second.
The wording on that one's weird. That says shipped
Do you think
to
so?
China, as though it was
Yes.
developed in somewhere else outside of China.
Yes. So basically, this talks to companies like your Intels, your AMDs, and Nvidias shipping products to China that China can then pick up and then obviously reverse engineer, if you like.
Right. So this is not the talking specific the design. It's actual manufactured product
Correct.
going in. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think a
correct.
lot of things that end up in China gets reverse engineered, which is why I guess that's why they want to just hold it back and stop it being sent across in case it just gets replicated.
Yeah.
Can I ask then, like, in reality, if the Chinese government wanted to get hold of a product out it's not really going to stop it. So how much of this is just a kind of a political dance versus actually really?
Well, it's a general sanction, I guess, right? So if you are caught shipping this stuff out, you are technically breaking the law. So
Correct.
and you'd probably
Correct.
be jailed for espionage or what, I don't know. It's
Treason.
something.
High treason, perhaps. Yeah, but I mean, these things are not something you kind of, get on the shop floor. You don't go to a Curry's or a Micro Center or anything along those lines and, pick up a box, and walk out with it. I mean, these are big machines, big pieces of technology that have to be shipped.
Just to give our listeners a bit of a context, and probably me even, this kind of spec of chips then, or performance, I should say. Are we talking, to do supercomputers to do like,
AI, high performance chips. Would I say data center?
Yeah. The enterprise grade kind of kit that you just won't get from a PC world or all that sort of stuff.
No, definitely.
This is much higher spec than you would get, like banks would use for their computer processors.
Definitely. I mean, it's a petaflop. It's a supercomputer.
Yeah,
effectively, it's not even a server blade.
So we're talking about like breaking encryption or doing some advanced military
AI,
military
correct.
simulations and that type of thing, or
research, analytics, that sort of thing. But these, if you could think about it this way, right? Everything that happens on the high end, whether it be data center, government, and that sort of thing, usually trickles down, to consumer at some point.
Yeah.
But this is just designed, if you like, to basically hold back the progression, what's going on maybe in China, something like that.
Sure. So effectively, they're huge machines, aren't they, of chips that are integrated in a different way than you compare to a server blade. So it is actually probably hard for China to move those across borders. You can't hide them, can you? They're too huge.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's not like getting DHL to basically, shift a box, is it? So obviously the US are putting the brakes on this. But in reality, what has been coming out of China? When I looked at this, I did a research. I picked out, I think, four companies that I thought were quite interesting. Birintech GPUs, basically was actually announced at Hot Chips 34, which is a well-known semiconductor conference. It's a data center product, so AI and HPC. And on paper, this is competition for NVIDIA and AMD GPUs for the data center. It compares to Hopper H100 and Ampere A100. And on paper, 2.8 times faster than the A100. Impressive. Yeah. And you have more threads. This is actually games focused GPU. There's a consumer level MTT S80 and a data center GPU, the MTT S3000. I won't even try and pronounce that architecture. No, I will. The Chunjiao, I think. The Chunjiao architecture. Yeah. And I think this particular GPU is comparable to an NVIDIA 3060 and 3060 Ti. So obviously down a generation.
It'd be interesting to see. I don't know if you managed to, Joe, as part of your research, the pricing on any of this, or maybe it comes later or something. But it comes to one of those things that I always look at as price to performance kind of ratios and things like that.
Yeah, I don't know that I was able to get a ratio, but I feel I got some indicative pricing. The thing about the price to performance ratio, you got to get hold of the car and you got to have reviews actually putting it through its paces.
Of course, yeah.
And I think it's quite difficult with these products.
Yeah, but even if you said it's comparable to a 3060, if you just assume on that basis, obviously without testing, and then you say, how does it compare price-wise against the 3060?
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing I'm looking at. Now, if it's significantly cheaper and can give it some competition, then that's where they're starting to, chase behind NVIDIA and give them a bit of something to think about.
Yeah, indeed. Next on the list, is the Xiaojin. It's consumer focused. I think these are actually CPUs. And you've got the KX6000G for the consumer and KH440,000 for data center. And they're using this thing called the Yongfeng microarchitecture for data centers. And they have a separate architecture for consumer, the Liu Xiaoji microarchitecture for consumers. Actually, I'm doing a pretty decent job of this pronunciation. I was really just thinking about that. And last but not least, the Lunson chips. And these are coming this year, actually. It has Ryzen 5000 performance. Okay. What it's doing is it's actually not based on x86 directly. It's MIPS in custom instruction sets. Yeah. Not x86. But it emulates x86. And I think the primary use case here is for Linux. Yeah. So, as I said before, I managed to pick out kind of the 4 interesting players in this market. China's consumer and data center semiconductor market. Moving into a bit more detail. Okay. Biren in their GPUs. So it all sounds very impressive. So you look at the overall specs, 77 billion transistors, PCIe Gen 5, 256 T-flops for FE32, and 2048 TOPS of Int8, and that's really for AI. 64 gigabytes of memory, and a die-to-die interconnect, I should say, of 896 gigabytes a second. 2.3 terabytes of external I/O bandwidth, and basically working on TSMC's 7nm node, which has been hit by sanctions, obviously.
Are we able to get reviews of these, of like Western outlets actually reviewing the tech, or is this just?
I found very minimal.
Yeah, okay.
If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
But the comparisons I have been able to kind of find of Biren versus NVIDIA in a nutshell.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's data center.
Right, okay.
But it compares kind of fairly well to basically quite modern NVIDIA products in Hopper and Ampere.
Yeah, and the reliability is there as well.
I think I haven't found any information on that.
Yeah,
But I'd be surprised if it wasn't being in data center. And you imagine these sit in maybe the Chinese government's data centers.
Yeah.
So you imagine there'll be
Okay.
something there.
yeah, got it. Yeah,
And again, on paper, this looks like the fastest data center GPU that money can buy. What I will say about them is that, interestingly, they're on TSMC's node. So TSMC, obviously, they'll have they've got killer products basically. AMD, Nvidia, Intel, they're all using TSMC.
Hence the US battle over Taiwan.
Yeah, hence the US battle. I mean, it makes more sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On paper, they look competitive.
Mm.
That's what I would say. Moving on from that, more threads GPUs. Now, this one is something, a product close to what we'd be interested in. It's a consumer-based GPU, okay? Gaming focused, let's say. You have got a data center variant, but looking at the specs, supports standards like CUDA, DirectX, Open, GL, CL, Vulkan, PCIe 5 support, but is actually sitting on a 12 nm process, so it's a little behind. Has AVI encoding support, which is modern, and DisplayPort 1.4 and HDMI 2.1. So fairly modern. If you look at the what I've laid out here, I've laid out some comparisons between the consumer MTT S80 and the RTX 3060 and 3060 Ti's. So you might say reasonably price comparable, memory wise comparable, better bandwidth, same with memory speeds, clock speeds. Yeah, I mean it's in the ballpark. The T flops again in the ballpark.
Who's gonna actually buy this stuff? I mean, surely the US are gonna have, because all the currencies. A lot of the trade is denominated in dollars.
Mm.
So a lot of countries are complying to US sanctions.
Yeah.
So who is actually? I was interested to know who is actually using this stuff other than China.
It'll be China, I think, for now.
It'll be China.
Just China. Maybe Russia.
Potentially, yes.
And any sort of local Southeast Asian countries that can't get hold of the other sort of standard ones as well, I reckon, as long as it's competitive in price.
Those are big markets. I think what I find more interesting is where they lie from a technology standpoint in relation. Yeah, because obviously we can't get hold of these products right now. That's clear. But where do these guys actually lie in comparison? Because really, if we want competition, the technology's got to be comparable. And right now, this consumer GPU feels like it's maybe a generation behind or maybe 1.5 generations behind. The summary I got from some of the information I've seen is that, yeah, it's comparable to the 3060 Ti, but there's no ray tracing, for these cards. There's no tensor cores as you'd find in the NVIDIA cards. Interestingly, it does work with resizable bar, but everybody knows that's a kind of an old technology that's just been rebranded. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's 2 gens, a gen and a half down. We don't know about the drivers. And Linus Tech Tips did test it. He said at times it compared to a GTX 1660. And I imagine it's largely because of the drivers. And even for something like CS GO, it was 30 frames per second versus 160 to 200 frames per second. So, but League of Legends, he was running 300 to 400 FPS on the NVIDIA card, 1000. So you could imagine the hardware itself, decent enough, but drivers, however, we've seen how big a challenge that can be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean,
It's getting there.
Yeah, they're definitely behind, but it's getting there.
Yeah, and you can see the prices there that you've got approximate, and as well as the TDP as well. Obviously, it depends on how much they're really drawing, but it doesn't seem like it's as efficient as well. So, number of different things that it needs to probably look at, but it's at least it's usable by the looks of things.
Yeah, but with more threads, they're also on a a worse process node.
Yeah, and then by default they'll be limited anyway.
Yeah, they'll be limited by that. Moving on, the Xiaojin high performance PC CPU. So they've got a 4-core high performance PC consumer chip, KX6000G, and they've also got a 32-core server CPU, the KX40000. Now, clock speed wise, it's in the ballpark. the consumer CPU, it's a low core count. It's 4 cores. So you might say that's, in my mind, probably about 7 years behind. Yeah, something along those lines. It's compatible with x86, which is good. Supports only PCIe 3 and USB 3.2. It actually does have integrated graphics, which delivers 1.5 teraflops. I think that's basically Xbox One, PlayStation 4 kind of levels. The base consoles. 16nm processor, obviously that's clearly behind. I don't have prices, but what I did is I decided to compare the Xiaojin, the consumer chip, to the Ryzen's, the latest kind of Zen 4 chips, and quite clearly lagging behind in terms of core count, clock speed, probably cache, all of those factors on a much word process node, but interestingly, the TDP is quite low.
Yeah, that's a good sign for efficiency.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not pushing as hard though. That's the thing. As a chip, it's 4 cores, 4 threads. It's single threaded as well. So how does it compare? So what was the last 4 core Intel chip? That was Tiger Lake. I think that was about 3 years ago. 3 years ago or so. The last Ryzen 4 core chip, the 4 core 4 thread chip, was 2017. But we've already said Xiaojin has a low TDP, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm guessing they must have their own bespoke motherboards, much like AMD and Intel, just to fit these chips.
Yes, yeah, I would think so. Moving on, the Lun Zon Sun CPUs. So this one, 3A6000 CPUs. I mean, all of these guys have got as bad naming conventions as AMD, Intel, and Nvidia. To be quite honest with you, I mean, what is it with tech and CPU manufacturers? I don't know. But this thing is Ryzen 5000 in Tiger 8 levels of performance. But obviously giving us that in 2023. Zen 3 level IPC, and they're going with Lune Arch architecture. So really, this thing's it's a mix of MIPS and RISC architecture. Probably because they can't get hold of the x86 kind of licenses or something along those lines. 12nm process, and what's I guess quite impressive is 68% uplift in performance versus their last gen. So nothing to be scoffed at. Now, given the same kind of comparison based on whatever kind of information I could glean. Again, we don't have much in the way of prices, but 4 cores, 4 threads, lagging way behind, clock speed lagging way behind, and not an awful lot of information with these particular chips. But again, comparisons with AMD and Intel, are the same. Ryzen had 4 cores, 4 threads back in 2017, but progress has been made, no doubt about that.
I mean, how many years behind would you say they are?
It seems to vary, I think. I mean, when I look at the CPUs, it feels like they're at least 5 years behind. Yeah. And I'm probably being quite conservative for the 5 years. And equally, I don't know what the jump is like from year to year. It feels like right now the jump in our territory with the AMDs and Intels of the world seem to be at least every year to year and a half. That's how it feels. And we're getting 20 to 30% each jump. But these guys, again, they're behind. And I think with the CPUs, it feels like they're further behind. But I wonder if that's because, especially some of these guys, it's consumer. But with data center, they seem to be closer. And I think there's probably a bit more of a push. AI, HPC, there's government applications, all of that sort of thing. So what next, guys? So when I looked at this stuff, I just thought to myself, okay, technology doesn't stand still, and obviously China's around about, give or take, 2 generations behind. let's call it that. Parking aside the fact you can't get a hold of the products very easily, right? You know, I couldn't see myself obviously swapping in my, my Ryzen chip for one of these Chinese kind of CPUs. Yeah, it's not as if you could, plug them into the same socket or anything like that. Clearly, China's progress may be slowed by some of the sanctions, but they are progressing.
How much of it is a reality now, given where they are, that they actually need to copy the chips? Because I just find it overblown. If they are already building this stuff at this level, right, themselves. Actually, let me roll back. Let me give you an example, right? I worked at a client that built aircraft engines. I won't say which one. And it was quite common knowledge that the Chinese government were consistently hacking their computers, stealing designs. It was well known, right? And they're obviously doing their best to battle that. But they said even if they had the full designs, all of it, all the parts, it would still take them 10 years from that point to reverse engineer the testing equipment for it all to work. Physical, computer, everything. So, and I wonder how much of that is the same for these chips. I.e., they already must be at a point where they've got all the infrastructure and their own research teams to continuously build and evolve these chips. And therefore, is it over? I'm asserting that it's probably overblown how much the US government say that they are reliant on copying stuff.
Yeah, I think the way I would look at it, I think there's probably a split between, let's say, design of chips and fabrication of chips and manufacture of chips. Yeah,
there's probably a technique, even if they looked at the chip and the design of it. Again, because all of these are based on the transistors and how much you can fit in the most efficient way. Borrowing some of those techniques and ideas, I'm sure it will take them forward. And if they can analyze it, they could be able to take advantage of a bit of that. Now, again, I think, like you say, Jay, do they really need to do that? I think they're just going to do it in parallel, right? Again, if you can take a bit of a shortcut, why not? Assuming, obviously, if you can even get your hands on it, of course.
Yeah, I think the 10 years would come if they lost access to, I would say TSMC, which is probably, obviously the sanctions are not helping that with that. Yeah, they lost access to TSMC, then you're definitely talking about at least 10 years, because it takes you that long to kind of stand up a
that kind of a mega warehouse for chips.
The manufacturing fabrication piece. Just to get the kind of building up and the infrastructure within it. But I think with chip design and that sort of thing, it does feel like they're still a ways behind, but they're catching up. And I think that's the part where I can imagine that could kind of continue on, quite rapidly, But, the fabrication part, something different. I mean, ideally, this is why I guess Taiwan's so important now. TSMC is basically in Taiwan, and everybody's now starting to build their own
equivalents,
foundries. Yeah, they're building their own kind of chip foundries. So this is why they're doing it, because obviously there's a looming threat here.
And they saw it over COVID and all the sort of supply issues, right? So absolutely. That's why everyone's doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if China keep moving at a pace, it's going to be difficult to catch up right now, because the Western chip designers, they're moving at a pace. And in fact, I feel they're accelerating, if you ask me. Over the last 5 years, I felt they're accelerating. I mean, AMD, they've got their X3D series CPUs, 5 to 25% boost based on that, and they're price competitive.
Yeah, well, we're probably going to branch into a completely different topic on this, but the Western world has already, and in AMD, Nvidia, etc., they've been taking advantage of the sort of AI kind of ML space to help them actually generate some of these designs and make them more efficient. So we're already reaching that kind of next phase of even more efficiency. So
Yeah, I don't know they're actually doing that. But the thing is, that's another tool potentially at some point, maybe even now, who knows, right? But the fact remains, these guys have got quite aggressive roadmaps. Zen 5 and Zen 6, they're coming quite soon, actually. And, AMD, we're still talking about AMD here, they're branching into AI accelerators because data center. FPGAs, they bought Xilinx for this purpose. So you can imagine integration with that into some of their dies. They've got APUs, they've got cache technology, chiplets. Basically, this is all advanced packaging technology. Intel, Meteor Lake, Lunar Lake incoming. Arch is probably still viable for integrated graphics or for a laptop. Battle Mage, they're talking about something along those lines. And again, these guys, all about AI accelerators. Tolls, which is their own chiplets, hybrid cores, advanced packaging technology again. And Intel, I feel they're only going to improve their own process node because they're a chip designer with fabrication. And NVIDIA much doing the same thing in AI ray tracing, and they've got a software stack. They've got the software stack leadership. If you look at it, stuff like DLSS, and you have to wonder what these guys are really going to do with ARM CPUs. Yeah, they're going to push that along, and what's after Lovelace, Ampere next, whatever we want to call it. So, what I'm trying to say is that, if the West, people like AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA are standing still, and these are the main guys that we know about. But there are other companies out there who are doing other things with AI, and everything else. Right? If we were standing still, then it'd be much, much easier for China to catch up. But we're not. And with these sanctions, I just feel it's just going to be that hard. And not impossible, because the Chinese government have got money to throw at the problem and people. They'll throw as much people and money at the problem that they think that it needs to be solved. Yeah. But they're definitely not there yet. And I think with that said, I think we should move on to the next topic. Okay, guys, the next topic I want to talk about is gaming and film. And I've titled this one, Is It a Match Made in Hell? So we have to think about video game adaptations and history of it. And really, obviously, for the guys listening to the audio and not seeing the YouTube video, I've got a list of films from 1993 to 2009. And really, for this period, I've kind of more or less said, yeah, this looks pretty bad. Okay. I mean, seriously, it looks pretty bad, right? So you've got obviously Super Mario Brothers with Bob Hoskins, Street Fighter with Van Damme in '94, the first glut of Mortal Kombat films, which were admittedly not very good, but forgivable because it was just
I actually like the first one.
good fun. Did you really? Yeah, I'll watch it again. Maybe you change your mind. Obviously, we had Wing Commander, if you remember that PC classic. Final Fantasy, we actually had animation. If I might be wrong, but I think that got Square into a lot of financial difficulty after they
Yeah, I actually own that on DVD.
So do I. I've got that as well. We've got Tomb Raider, basically Angelina Jolie's kind of movies. And to be honest, I didn't mind them. They weren't brilliant. They just weren't. I just didn't feel they were great.
It was closer to the reference material though, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely right. I mean, it's very very tongue-in-cheek, type of entertainment, but certainly wouldn't win any awards. Let's put it that way. There was a Silent Hill film. Actually, I caught snippets of, but I generally didn't think anything much of it. House of the Dead. I think there was a Doom film. I think this was with The Rock, wasn't it? Or, yeah, I think this was with Dwayne Johnson, if I'm not wrong. There was an Alone in the Dark movie. Blood Rain. A Dead or Alive film. You believe that? Hitman, which I'm not sure if it's good or bad, actually.
Yeah, I thought Hitman was okay.
I hope it's I think there's been a couple actually. I hope this is the one we're talking about. A film called Postal, and then we've got something called In the Name of the King, a dungeon siege tale. With Jason Statham in it, unbelievable. I've actually saw that. I've seen that recently, months back, and I thought, okay.
How do you have time to watch that but not play video games?
Well, that's like a period of the night when I'm just about to go to sleep.
Just something to send you to sleep.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I put it on, and then okay, this is terrible. Off the bed I go. Max Payne and something new that I didn't even know existed. Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. Did you even know that film existed?
I think I heard of it, but I was like, it's one of those that probably went straight to DVD or whatever at the time.
Yeah, something like that.
I can see Resident Evil in your pictures, but not listed. But that's a classic one. I actually like the first few.
Yeah, I wonder if I kind of let me have a think.
Oh, it's moved. It's in your next list on the next section.
Yeah, I think I decided to put it.
Oh,
That's
have
right.
you ranked it as good? Is this your good list?
Yeah, I've personally ranked it as good because there've been so many of them. Someone's got to have liked them, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one with Mia Djokovic, right? So yeah, and it's a 10-year plus franchise. It's doing something right. Prince of Persia, Jake Gyllenhaal and Ben Kingsley in it, which was reasonable fun. Yeah, Need for Speed, Hitman, Agent 47. There was an Assassin's Creed with Magneto himself. There was a Ratchet and Clank kind of animation, which didn't feel that Sony had a lot of input into. Warcraft, I felt was okay actually, quite close to the material, and it's not often that Blizzard sign off projects like this. I don't think it did very well. Yeah, so I'm guessing that we won't see any sequels, but it would have been amazing had it done well, because it's very close to the actual subject, the actual source material, and I kind of felt that, my God, the way the kind of like story would have gone in Warcraft. This is the RTS game Warcraft, right? We would have been in for a treat, but I think that ship sailed now. Obviously, I've called out kind of like Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, Angry Birds. It's an animation. Rampage with, I think this was with The Rock, which wasn't horrible, but equally it wasn't what I'd call good. A Pokemon movie with Detective Pikachu. Monster Hunter, which I did actually watch recently. Yeah, I don't know why I can get. It wasn't horrible. Mortal Kombat from 2021, which I felt was decent enough. Uncharted, which has done quite well, and the Sonic movies, which we know has done quite well.
They're good. My kids love them. My kids are 8 and 5, especially my son, obsessed with Sonic. I was obsessed with Sonic at the same age when I was younger, and I've seen the second one in cinema as well. Pretty high budget.
Yeah,
good pretty good acting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I just remember the it was Sonic 1, wasn't it? And they had a really janky looking Sonic. And I think there's enough of the fans that complained enough that it changed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And it looks really good. It looks really good now.
Yeah, definitely. I think at one point they would say Sonic looked a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it came down to, right? The last game on the list here, right? And this is quite funny in its own right, but the film's called Werewolves Within, and it's based on a VR game, which is kind of unbelievable, right? Which is very unbelievable. Of the two lists, right? You might say the stuff from the 90s to the early 2000s. There were some really questionable films here. right?
Mm.
75% of this stuff felt like B movie. Don't get me wrong, there were some big names. Street Fighter in '94, Van Damme was a big name back then.
There was
Yeah,
a
he was.
huge lineup of a cast in that one.
Yeah.
I started to enjoy that one actually. It's just funny to watch.
Yeah, it's funny to watch, but it's not actually good, is it? I don't think the intention was for you to laugh every kind of like 10 seconds or something like that.
Was Kylie Minogue in one
Yeah,
of them?
yeah, that was
That's
it.
right. She played Cammy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she played Cammy. I mean, the Final Fantasy animation that Square put out, and I think it was Square and it wasn't Square Enix then. That had Donald Sutherland in it, right? Voicing it, I seem to remember. And it was at the time it was really impressive animation. God, it was just you couldn't understand what was going on in this bloody film, could you? I mean, like seriously, what the bloody hell is he talking about? It's a story you might see in many kind of like Japanese kind of RPGs. Just didn't make any sense. But again, shades of B movie. Moving into the 2000s to current day, you're talking about A-listers, but A-listers with real acting chops and significant budgets and really, a proper storyline in some cases. Yeah, it's kind of swung, and part of me thought, is it swung because film itself and kind of cinema itself is swung a little bit, so we get less of the B movie treatment. But I'm not sure. But I will say it's just we're just in a better spot,
I think
aren't
they're
we?
definitely
Really?
adapting it better and probably getting better feedback from real fans rather than just some adaptation.
I also think there's a bit of a Netflix effect where the films that people would have gone to see in the cinema are now being fulfilled by Netflix TV shows and movies. Therefore, in order to entice people to the cinema, they've had to go for like gaming franchises with established audiences to then do the pull into the cinema. I suspect that's going on as well.
I think gaming is really part of pop culture now. We've got numbers here. If that's what I'm kind of thinking. I mean, thinking about the two lists, the '90s to the early 2000s and 2000s to current day. I just think gaming's. I mean, when I say pop culture, you become part of pop culture when you have the numbers, and I think gaming's definitely got the numbers.
Yeah.
Don't know that it can get away with some of the films that we had before. I mean, like, not saying that Bob Hoskins wasn't a big name back then, but that Super Mario movie, my God, that was just like, that was torture.
The other thing I would say is similar to gaming, and we've seen this over the last generation with the PS4 and the Xbox One, that kind of middle tier of gaming publishers and developers has kind of fallen out.
Yeah.
And you just have the big guns or the indie developers, and I think that's happened with the films and the previous set of poor quality video game franchise films were being filled out by the kind of the middle tier, the bottom end. I think that's fallen out.
Maybe
I was
the double A or something like that, right?
yeah.
Yeah. You might be right there, actually. You might be right. With that said, I mean, I think you're right about Netflix. It's been the kind of standard bearer for gaming-inspired film and television. We've had The Witcher, Castlevania, Cyberpunk, Takin, Dragon Age, Captain Laserhawk. I think that's a typo. Got to be a typo, right? A Blood Dragon remix. No, it's real. Okay, that was based on Far Cry 3, Cuphead, and Devil May Cry is actually coming to Netflix soon.
Devilman?
Yeah.
Oh, Devil May Cry. Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it anime or?
I think it's anime. I hope it's an anime.
Wasn't there Gran Turismo movie coming out soon as well? But that's not a Netflix one, obviously.
No, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, generally speaking, we're seeing more video games inspired TV and film. Maybe not directly linked to a known game. Stuff like Wreck-It Ralph pay homage to some of this stuff. We've seen Free Guy, Ready Player One, Pixels. this thing called the Peripheral on Amazon. Yeah, and obviously who could forget about Halo? It's all there, and let's not forget the earliest example of that, Tron.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end this. Well, end it. Tail end of the conversation. Because we've often talked about what the blue blazes is Sony's strategy. Yeah, I'm actually thinking right now that Sony are doing cross media properly. At least the early indicators are they seem to know what they're doing. In recent times, we're talking the last couple of years, every kind of film or TV program that's basically linked to one of their games has really well-known actors and really well-known directors. And I think that's the change I've seen. Not the actors, but the directors who get involved in these projects. The caliber there has just definitely stepped up. We've got TV shows, Last of Us, Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, HBO, that's going great guns. I think the last episode pulled in about 32 million views. 32 million. That's crazy.
It did really well, that series.
Yeah. And all of these people were talking about it that typically don't even talk about this sort of thing. I think early on in the year, there was talk about Elden Ring, that non-gamers were talking about Elden Ring. And now that we have non-gamers are talking about Last of Us. I mean, literally a group of people that sometimes, when I walk my dog, other dog owners in the park who I know don't know anything about computer games, they're talking about The Last of Us. And then Twisted Metal with Anthony Mackie, Will Arnett, and of all people, Samoa Joe playing Sweet Tooth, that well-known wrestler. And I think they recently had the teaser trailer out, and it was okay. You didn't get a lot, but there's some well-known people there. In film-wise, Uncharted with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, and I can't remember the director, but I think the director was a well-known director as well, who's done some good stuff. I mean, they've got some sequels coming up for that. It did so well. Yeah.
Have you guys seen it?
No, I've not watched
I haven't seen it yet. But
No, I need to see it. Yeah.
I mean, take it for what it is, and you probably have fun. Is what I hear about it. But then, what's looming on the horizon is Gran Turismo, with Orlando Bloom and David Harbour and Digimon Hansu, and it's well-known actors. And I think the director's also well-known, and it's sounds a little bit crazy that you could basically make a film based on Gran Turismo, but it's based on a real-life story. We've only had that Gran Turismo Academy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just interested in what sort of story they're going to have with that.
It's a real story. It's about a gamer based off the whole, Gran Turismo thing became a real kind of like a racing driver.
Basically, won the competition of... Yeah.
Oh, so it's like almost like a... Okay.
And turned him into a real racer.
Okay.
Then Ghost of Tsushima, and you got the director from John Wick doing this. Chad Stahelski. John Wick. This shit's going to be violent. Looking forward to that. There's something for Days Gone coming. And Gravity Rush, which is probably a lesser known Sony IP, but it's a really good Sony IP. I think that established itself. I believe it was on the Vita. And then they were kind of, I think, remasters for PS4. It's a bit of a niche game, but the fact that they're doing something with it is quite interesting. So I kind of wondered to myself, maybe this is that's the real future for AAA for Sony. AAA means you have the game, and then you have the film or the TV series. That's their bag. That's one pillar that they'll probably kind of occupy.
Yeah, because it just builds that massive ecosystem, and it's like, okay, you may be a gamer, but then you're like, okay, well, it's the same lore and same world. I'd be interested in watching that film or that TV series. And then the other way around, if you're into TV and films, and then actually that piques your interest, I might try the game now. And lo and behold, you're getting sort of extra upsell on kind of like on multiple sides.
Yeah, if you look at the actors and directors involved, I mean, it's kind of almost, it almost feels like to me, right? We've had the early days in the 90s to early 2000s where, this is B movie. Then we have 2000s to current day, and then we have, okay, there's some big budgets, big actors, big directors doing this. It's not quite there, yeah. And there's almost kind of like a loose synergy between the two things, video games and in the films. You know, it's like what one's a consequence of the other being good. If it wasn't good, this wouldn't exist. But now you've got this situation where actually the product is the world and the story and then and the universe, and we've got a game, we've got film, we'll probably have music or something. I don't know.
mean, the music that goes along with either film, TV series, or the game, no doubt there will be themes in it that will ring true on both sides. And yeah, I mean, it's part of the experience, right? That's the reason why we play games.
Yeah, we'll have the game show next. You know? the dating app. Something along those lines. But I just wondered to myself as I was prepping this, and is this the real future for AAA for Sony? Is this actually? I mean, like we talked about the quadruple A, whatever it is. Maybe this is really quadruple A.
And there's synergies, right? There's reusable assets. Again, the music, the script, again, the whole thing you can just reuse as a universe, right?
The writing,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. I was thinking about this as well. Jim Ryan, some time ago, as this generation was kicking off, he talked about, and he was trying to plant the seed that we're going to do more with our IP. And he was saying that we want more people to have access to our IP. And at first I thought he was specifically talking about gaming. But then over time, now I'm thinking that he actually isn't specifically talking about the games themselves. He's just talking about the worlds. And I think that's what he said. He talked about the worlds. And I think this is their strategy being materialized, if you like. And then what you just said, Alice, also strikes a chord with me. You say the reuse of assets and the work that's gone into a game, right? With that said, Unreal Engine is all about that. Television or film assets or game assets and bringing that all together.
Yeah, the same database they're using for movie grade assets can be imported straight into the engine. And Sony have bought a share in Unreal, haven't they? So
yeah, and they're using it for their films and TV programs, I think, also. As well as their games, right? So with all that there, we've talked for ages about what in the blue bases is Sony up to? What could they be up to? I mean, we know about the live service stuff, right? But I think that's another pillar they'll lean on to make some money.
Maybe it's just to get you so absorbed in the world, and then they'll entice you in with a metaverse on the other end that's exactly that world.
So this comes back to what I was talking about with the VR headset. That is the tech for something a bigger play with the movies, which is their version of a metaverse, which they're going for, 100%.
You can imagine, right? I mean, we've been struggling to say, because Sony being so quiet, what the bloody hell are these guys up to? Maybe I'm giving them more credit than they deserve, right? But to me, it's been hiding in plain sight almost. It's hiding in plain sight some what they're doing. And the other thing I did think about, we've heard about, we know PlayStation have got their PlayStation Network and what that means. They've got their IP. They've also got their live service coming up. But then the other day, right, you hear about Sony repainting something around, what was it? It wasn't a painting actually. It was they were just talking about what's the currency, or what was that? Someone remind me. What's that?
Oh, you mean the sort of oh crap. There was there was some tokens or something that they had internally.
That's right.
That's right. I'll go quick Google. I think while we continue talking.
Yeah. What I was thinking is, right, all this is going on. They've got these 10 live service games. They've got their kind of services network. At some point, they're gonna have, they're gonna want an economy, and they're gonna want a currency for that economy. Yeah, and the currency for that economy is you're gonna probably be able to use on the network, on the live service games, anything that comes under that banner. Yeah.
Their own kind of cryptocurrency type thing.
Yeah, definitely.
They've already got on their PlayStation, their digital collectibles they've started.
It's the stars, yeah. And then they've got Home as well.
Which is actually still looks good.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the only thing of its type, and I think there was some developers out there who they kind of like had a experimental version of it they've got running actually at the moment. It's running in some shape or form, but not through Sony, but through some enthusiasts. You know, there's all these little elements here that you could now kind of join up, if you know what I mean. And it's becoming, for me anyway, a bit more crystallized. I mean, maybe I'm giving them too much credit. You know, maybe none of this will happen. It just feels there's a natural synergy to a lot of what they're talking. You know, what they're not talking about anything, but there's a natural synergy to a lot of these rumors you're hearing. I'm wondering at some point whether you got to see it for real. That said, that massive tangent said, day one, it's a match made in hell. Then we got to a point where, yeah, I'm kind of not afraid to be seen with you in the relationship. And now, we're getting to the point. It's more kind of marital bliss. Yeah, we're seeing a bit more.
It is because gaming is now more mainstream than it used to be, right? As well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the numbers. It's always been about numbers. And without those numbers, none of this is going to happen.
Yeah, and I am liking the trend as well. Again, yeah, some of the games that I've been playing, there's been anime adaptations of them, and they've been doing really well. There's some really good stuff that's out there, and it just helps grow those worlds, and it does keep you hooked into it.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I think this was a Jim Ryan thing where he kind of made an analogy between really music and gaming. And obviously the numbers for music versus the numbers for gaming, obviously it's a different experience. The time investment's different, all sorts of things. But the only way that you got to get people to experience some of these worlds is to have them on different sorts of mediums and media and whatnot. Otherwise, you're never going to hit those numbers. Yeah. There's no doubt about that.
I do worry about how much time we're going to have to consume all this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really the downside of gaming being what it is today. That it's just absolutely impossible. I mean, it's hard enough just to keep up with the news, let alone to play the games.
And I'm thinking of it more in the perspective of them building out all of these different channels of business, and for it to be sustainable, it means you have to lock yourself into only their ecosystem, and all your time goes there for it to work. I mean, how much?
What happens though eventually, if you assume that each of these end up with a live service world of some sort, obviously they won't be able to all coexist if there's a limited number of players and stuff. That's kind of what happens. When I played World of Warcraft back in the day, I didn't play anything else. This is the only thing I ever played. I went massively behind on. I skipped a whole sets of generations of gaming consoles and other things, just because I was just on PC playing World of Warcraft.
I think live service makes absolutely good economic and financial sense. Obviously, gamers are probably yawning and saying this is bloody boring what he's talking about, but it's the truth. If you look at what happens now, right? You can even imagine that it's happening with games that are not even being sold as a live service, because they get your bog standard AAA game out. You've got your campaign and whatever else it is, and then surely but slowly, you got your end game, and all you just do is keep that kind of engine ticking over for a number of years. The investment it takes to build a game is massive. Yeah, so you want to get as much out of it as you can, and the peripheral things around having a game is massive. The marketing, the support, all of that sort of stuff. And like you just said, games development is so multifaceted now. Being able to leverage what you got in the game for something else, why not? Makes perfect sense to me.
I was going to say, just watch out for that Destiny movie.
Yeah, it's gonna happen, man.
It's a TV series, I would imagine. It'll be part of all this.
Yeah, tell you, it will happen soon.
It's part of all this. So
yeah, when Sony ever have this showcase, whenever that happens, Destiny, the TV show, it will happen. Drinkledge will be in that one, but it will have better lines.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. Look, you know what, guys? I think with that said, I think it's time to end this. Let's move on. Okay, guys. So it's come to that time of the night again where we've got to say our goodbyes. So what I'll do is I'll kind of ask, my regular question. What tech and gaming things have you been doing lately? So Al, I'll start with you.
Oof. Well, since we haven't done our podcast in so long, it's been such a huge gap. From tech stuff, I'm gonna say I've been playing a lot with the likes of ChatGPT, the generative AI stuff, and it's really powerful. It's really interesting. Does help me on my kind of day to day. There's limitations. You just need to be wary of them and things like that. But yeah, it's extremely powerful, and I can't wait to use it more in anger and the other things that come from it. And it almost feels like it's just changing almost every week. Something brand new is coming, some new idea is coming with it, and it's exciting. It's scary as well. Obviously with the impact to layoffs and jobs and other things, but yeah, that stuff is massively interesting right now. So we've been playing a lot with that from a tech side, and I bought some more RAM. I still need to install it into my PC, and that's about it from a tech perspective. Gaming wise, oh god, let's just think. Probably started playing a few more gacha games, some more mobile games.
What
Yeah,
more?
yeah.
You possibly play anymore.
There's a Street
for those
Fighter one,
things. Yeah.
Street Fighter Duel. That's just a very basic. The good thing is that you can basically just let it run on its own. Started dabbling more recently. There's a Honkai Star Rail, the same company that did Genshin. Just been playing that a bit. Although to be honest, I'm probably going to drop that one quite quickly. Gaming wise, I picked up the odd retro game. I think Vampire Survivor. It's quite like a bullet hell kind of game. Probably about it. And I guess I'm just probably waiting for Diablo 4 at this point. It's just around the corner now. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much me. So I'll probably pass it on to Jay.
Yeah, it's a lot's happened. I had been messing around with fighting games. I mean, I've lost count. I've pretty much bought all of them, including the Japanese ones. Under night in birth, all the way through to playing the new Street Fighter 6. There's been a couple of betas of that. Looking forward to Diablo. I've bought Resident Evil 2 and 3, the remakes, at a good price. And the new Zelda's coming out, so I've been playing the Breath of the Wild, which I'm only like 25% through or something. So, and just playing a lot of games. My kids are getting older and they're getting into games. In fact, they're so hooked onto games, they don't want to stop. So I always have to pull the controllers away from them. But yeah, that's been me really. Destiny's been an ongoing thing. I always play every Sunday. The new yearly DLC came out, Lightfall, which was a disappointment from a campaign perspective, but the raids and the dungeons and stuff are really good. So that's been keeping me going. I'm back with my regular raiding group after having a bit of a break. And yeah, but like we said, Diablo 4's on the horizon. And hopefully we can get playing together. It's me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess it's over to me then. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's tech-wise. Obviously, I work in technology, so I've just been doing what I need to do for that, and trying to get obviously my head around certain aspects of data engineering and the like. Nothing too major other than that, and obviously I have to keep. I'm always keeping up with the news and all that kind of stuff. The semiconductor. And the like. Gaming wise, obviously, I'm kind of prepping for Diablo as well, so obviously started playing Lost Ark and Path of Exile. And probably at some point, I want to basically spin up Diablo 3 again. Because I would like a point of reference before I get into the fall. And, you know, true to form, I did buy the Necromancer kind of DLC, and I never bothered playing it. So I mean, like, so I'm gonna do that before Diablo 4. And you know, other than that, gaming wise, yeah, I really, you know, really want to find out when Sony gonna do their showcase. And you know, like obviously Game Fest is coming up, and you know, obviously the Xbox Direct is coming up for kind of Starfield. So I'm looking forward to that, and really, it has been a long time since we've basically done this podcast, and just getting back to doing that is what I really want to do. So you know, that's gonna be interesting as well. I think that's me really, and I think that's you guys. So I think, you know, happy that we managed to get this going again, because you know we've been all so busy for such a long time. So we've not really been able to have our usual conversations. Okay, guys. With that said, I think it's time to say our goodbyes.
It's goodbye for me, Al.
It's goodbye for me, Jay.
And it's goodbye from me, Joel. And whatever you're doing, please like, subscribe, and comment. And have a stellar day.